The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Subspace follows predictable patterns. Warp fields maintain coherent geometries. Even the most exotic phenomena, from temporal anomalies to quantum singularities, obey mathematical rules that can be measured, analyzed, and ultimately comprehended. But what happens when something tears through the fabric of reality itself, bringing with it physics that should not, cannot, exist in this dimension? The USS Enterprise D was conducting a routine survey of the Calendra sector, charting subspace fluctuations near an abandoned Romulan listening post, when every sensor on the bridge screamed in unison. "Captain!" Lieutenant Worf's voice cut through the sudden chaos, his hands flying across the tactical console. "Massive energy surge, bearing 27 Mark V. Reading exotic particles I cannot identify, subspace is destabilizing." Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his command chair, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen as space itself seemed to tear open. Not a wormhole. Not a spatial rift. Something else entirely. "Shields up. Red alert. Counselor." Deanna Troy's hands gripped her chair, her empathic senses overwhelmed. "I feel confusion. Anger. Pain. And something else, determination so intense it's almost physical." The Rupture expanded, bleeding colors that had no name in any Federation database. Lightning that wasn't lightning arced across the wound in spacetime, and then something emerged. Something metallic. Something impossible. Object penetrating our shields. Data's positronic brain processed information faster than any organic mind could comprehend. "Captain, the object appears to be..." The sentence died as the figure materialized directly on the bridge in a cascade of exotic particles and electromagnetic discharge. Consoles sparked. The lights flickered. And standing between the tactical station and the science console, surrounded by dissipating energy, was a humanoid figure encased in red and gold armor that gleamed under the bridge lighting. The armor was unlike anything in Starfleet's extensive database: sleek, form-fitting, covered in glowing lines of blue-white light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The figure's helmet swiveled, taking in the bridge with movements too smooth, too precise. Then a voice emerged, filtered through speakers but unmistakably human, unmistakably exhausted, and carrying an edge of sardonic humor despite the circumstances. "Okay. This is new. Friday, run a diagnostic. Where the hell are we?" Unable to establish GPS satellite connection, boss, a feminine artificial intelligence responded from the armor itself, her Irish accent clear and precise. "Stellar cartography does not match any known configuration. Radiation signatures are inconsistent with. Security team to the bridge." Worf's disruptor was already drawn, aimed at the intruder's center mass. "Do not move." The armored figure's hands rose slowly, repulsors glowing with building energy. "Easy there, Klingon. I'm having a really bad day, and I'd hate for it to get worse. Friday, are we still in one piece? Armor integrity at 87%. Arc reactor operating at reduced efficiency, local physics appear to be interfering with quantum tunneling effects. Boss, I'm detecting antimatter reactions nearby. Contained, but significant." Picard stepped forward, positioning himself between Worf's weapon and the stranger. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. You are aboard a vessel of the United Federation of Planets. Lower your weapons, and we can resolve this peacefully." The helmet tilted, assessing. Then with a gesture, the repulsors dimmed. "Federation? Never heard of it. Friday, we're not in Kansas anymore." The faceplate retracted with a mechanical hiss, revealing a human face, late 30s, dark hair, goatee, and brown eyes that held intelligence and wariness in equal measure. "Tony Stark. And before you ask, yeah, that Tony Stark. Though judging by the look on your faces, maybe not." Data's head cocked to one side, his yellow eyes studying the stranger with algorithmic precision. Fascinating. Your technology operates on principles inconsistent with known physics. The energy signature from your chest device is producing exotic particles that should not be stable in normal spacetime. Stark's eyes narrowed. You're an android. Advanced synthetic. Neural net or positronic? When Data's eyebrows rose fractionally, Stark nodded. Yeah, I know my AI architecture. Built a few myself. I am Lieutenant Commander Data, Second Officer and Chief Operations Officer. I am indeed a positronic android, though I am curious how you identified my nature so quickly. Micro-expressions, or lack thereof. Response time to stimuli. And your eyes literally glow yellow. Stark's hand moved to his chest, where the arc reactor pulsed beneath the armor. Look, Captain. Picard, was it? I was fighting something that ripped a hole between dimensions. My reactor overloaded trying to seal the breach, and apparently instead of dying in a very expensive explosion, I ended up here. Wherever here is. The turbolift doors hissed open, admitting a security team led by a stern-faced officer. Worf gestured them into position, creating a perimeter around the stranger. Captain, recommend we confine the intruder to quarters under guard until we can verify his claims. I'm detecting significant electromagnetic interference from his armor. Geordi LaForge's voice came from engineering over the comm. Captain, whatever that reactor in his chest is, it's putting out exotic particles that are starting to interact with our matter-antimatter containment field. We need to either stabilize it or get it off the ship. Stark's expression shifted from wary to alarmed. Wait, did you say matter-antimatter? As in, you're running a starship on a barely contained mutual annihilation reaction? That's insane. That's brilliant, but also insane. The warp core is perfectly stable, Picard said evenly, though concern flickered in his eyes. However, if your technology poses a risk to this ship and her crew, we will need to take precautions. Mr. Data, can you assess the threat? Data's fingers danced across his console. The exotic particles are indeed interfering with our power systems, but the effect appears to be inadvertent rather than hostile. However, Captain, his reactor is operating in an increasingly unstable manner. I estimate it will reach critical failure within 4.7 hours unless we can adapt it to function within our universe's physical laws. 4 hours. Stark's jaw clenched. Friday, confirm. Confirmed, boss. Arc reactor efficiency declining. We're burning through palladium faster than normal physics would allow. At current rate, we'll hit critical mass in 4 hours, 18 minutes. Recommend immediate shutdown. Can't do that. Shutdown means the shrapnel near my heart starts moving again. Stark met Picard's gaze directly. So here's the situation, Captain. My reactor keeps me alive. It's also apparently incompatible with your universe's physics and might explode, taking your ship with it. I'm a genius, but I can't fix this alone in 4 hours. So how about we skip the confine the stranger part and move straight to work together so nobody dies? The bridge was silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Picard nodded slowly. Mr. LaForge, report to the bridge. Mr. Data, begin analyzing Mr. Stark's technology. Counselor Troy, I want your assessment. He turned to Stark, his expression grave but not unkind. We will help you, Mr. Stark. But understand, you are aboard a Federation starship, and you will abide by our rules. Can you accept that? Stark's smile was thin, tired. Captain, right now I'm 4 hours away from becoming a very expensive bomb. I'll accept just about anything that keeps me breathing. He paused, glancing around the bridge, the sleek consoles, the carpeted floor, the view screen showing stars that weren't his stars. Though I have to say, for a starship, this is surprisingly civilized. Where I come from, military vessels don't have carpeting. The Enterprise is not a military vessel, Mr. Stark, Picard said quietly. We are explorers. Scientists. Diplomats. Starfleet's mission is to seek out new life and new civilizations. To boldly go where no one has gone before. Stark looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his face. Explorers. Right. No offense, Captain, but you're pointing a lot of weapons at me for a bunch of explorers. We are explorers, Worf rumbled, his disruptor still trained on Stark. We are not naive. Fair enough. Stark's armor retracted further, revealing more of his civilian clothing beneath, a black Sabbath t-shirt and jeans, incongruous against the sleek professionalism of the Enterprise crew. So, who do I talk to about not exploding? If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. Geordi LaForge emerged from the turbolift, his visor scanning the electromagnetic spectrum as he approached. Captain, I'm reading, whoa. He stopped, staring at Stark's chest. That energy signature. That's not dilithium. That's not anything in our database. Arc reactor, Stark said. Miniaturized clean energy. Capable of producing 3 gigajoules per second at full capacity. Right now, it's barely hitting 2, and dropping. Your universe's physics are choking it out. Geordi's visor fixed on the glowing circle in Stark's chest. May I take a closer look? Be my guest. Just don't try to remove it. Last time someone did that, it didn't end well for them. As Geordi began his analysis, Picard gestured to his ready room. Mr. Stark, we have much to discuss. And very little time to do it. Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, avenger, and now a man very far from home, followed the captain. Behind him, the bridge crew exchanged glances, some curious, some suspicious, all wondering the same thing. What had just invaded their universe? And what would it cost to send him back? Picard's ready room was a study in restraint, shelves of books, artifacts from distant worlds, a single potted plant, and a large window overlooking the endless expanse of space. Stark took it in with the rapid assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating environments for threats and advantages. You actually have physical books, Stark said, running a finger along the spines. Shakespeare. Homer. Dickens. Either you're old-fashioned or you really commit to the aesthetic. I find that physical books provide a tactile connection to knowledge that digital formats lack, Picard replied, moving to the replicator. Tea. Earl Grey. Hot. A cup materialized instantly. May I offer you something? Stark stared at the replicator, then at Picard. Did you just make that out of thin air? Matter synthesis from stored energy patterns. Standard replicator technology. Every quarters on this ship has one. Picard took a sip of his tea, noting Stark's expression with interest. You seem surprised. Surprised? Captain, where I come from, something like that would revolutionize civilization overnight. You're talking about post-scarcity technology. Unlimited food, water, medical supplies. Stark's mind was visibly racing. How long have you had this? Replicator technology has been Federation standard for nearly a century, though the principles date back further. Picard gestured to a chair. Please, sit. We have limited time, and I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Stark remained standing, his engineer's mind still processing. A century. You've had Star Trek replicators for 100 years, and you're still out here exploring? Most civilizations would have turned that into a weapon or collapsed into hedonism. The Federation was founded on principles of cooperation, exploration, and the betterment of all sentient life. When basic needs are met, humanity is free to pursue higher purposes. Picard set down his tea. But we're not here to discuss Federation philosophy. Your reactor is failing. Commander LaForge believes he can adapt it, but he needs to understand its fundamental principles. And I need to understand you, Mr. Stark. What's to understand? I'm a guy in a metal suit who fell through a hole in reality. Stark finally sat, though his body language remained tense. Friday, full transparency mode. Show the captain what he needs to see. The AI responded immediately, projecting holographic schematics from Stark's armor into the air between them. Picard leaned forward, studying the intricate designs, the arc reactor's quantum tunneling mechanisms, the nanotech molecular structure, the repulsor technology, the AI integration. Your technology is remarkable, Picard said quietly. But it's also weaponry. Advanced weaponry designed for a single individual. It's a suit of armor. Defense. With offensive capabilities that could level a city block, according to these specifications. Picard's gaze was penetrating. In your universe, Mr. Stark, what were you defending against? Stark's jaw tightened. Aliens. Terrorists. Megalomaniacs with god complexes. Giant purple guys who wanted to kill half of all life in the universe with a snap of his fingers. He met Picard's eyes. I've seen New York invaded by an alien army. I've fought robots trying to extinguish humanity. I've lost friends, lost teammates, he stopped. I built this because someone has to stand between the world and whatever wants to destroy it. And who gave you that authority? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Stark's expression hardened. Nobody gave it to me. I took it. Because I could. Because I had to. You know what the alternative is, Captain? Waiting for governments to act while people die. Committees and protocols and bureaucracy while cities burn. The Prime Directive would disagree with that assessment, Picard said evenly. Our most sacred principle prohibits interference in the natural development of civilizations. Even when we witness suffering that we could prevent. That's insane. That's wisdom earned through centuries of mistakes. Picard stood, moving to the window. The Federation learned, often painfully, that imposing our solutions on others, no matter how well-intentioned, creates more harm than good. We provide aid when requested, defend against aggression, but we do not play God. Stark rose as well, joining Picard at the window. I'm not playing God. I'm just a man trying to protect people. With the power of a god, Picard countered. Your armor gives you capabilities that exceed most planetary defense systems in the Federation. You are, in essence, a one-man army. That concentration of power in a single individual is antithetical to everything the Federation stands for. So what, you believe in democracy by committee? Slow, careful deliberation while threats multiply. Stark's voice carried an edge. I've seen what that gets you, Captain. Compromise. Half measures. People dead because nobody wanted to make the hard call. And I've seen what unchecked individual power creates, Picard said, his tone steel beneath the diplomacy. Tyranny. Oppression. The belief that might makes right. He turned to face Stark fully. Tell me, Mr. Stark, in your universe, who holds you accountable? Who stops you if you're wrong? The question struck deeper than Stark expected. Memories flashed, Sokovia falling from the sky, the Accords tearing the Avengers apart, the faces of people caught in the crossfire of superhero battles. I hold myself accountable. That is insufficient. One cannot be both judge and executioner of one's own actions. You don't know what I've faced. Perhaps not. But I know what you represent, a dangerous philosophy that places faith in the individual over the collective, in action over deliberation, in force over diplomacy. Picard's voice softened slightly. I do not doubt your intentions, Mr. Stark. But good intentions paved with advanced weaponry have destroyed more civilizations than I care to count. Before Stark could respond, Data's voice came through the calm, Captain, Commander LaForge has completed his preliminary analysis. The situation is more complicated than we initially believed. On my way. Mr. Stark, please accompany me to engineering. They moved through the corridors in tense silence, crew members stepping aside to stare at the armored stranger walking beside their captain. Stark noticed the looks, curiosity, suspicion, fear. He'd seen those expressions before, usually right before someone tried to steal his technology or destroy it. Engineering was a cathedral of barely contained power. The warp core pulsed with blue-white light, matter and antimatter annihilating each other in a controlled cascade that made Stark's reactor look like a birthday candle. Geordi stood at a console, his visor tracking energy flows invisible to normal sight. "Captain, we've got a problem," Geordi said without preamble. "The arc reactor isn't just failing, it's fundamentally incompatible with our universe. The quantum tunneling effects it relies on don't work the same way here. It's like trying to run a computer program written for one operating system on a completely different architecture. Can you adapt it?" Picard asked. "Maybe. But it'll require a complete rewrite of the reactor's operating parameters. We'd essentially be rebuilding it from scratch." Geordi turned to Stark. "I'm going to need complete access to your AI and your armor systems. Everything. No secrets, no holdbacks." Stark's instinct was immediate refusal. Friday contained not just his technology but his entire life, private files, security protocols, personal memories stored in armor logs. Handing over complete access meant vulnerability, exposure. It meant trust. "How do I know you won't just copy everything?" Stark asked. "Reverse engineer my tech, integrate it into your weapons systems." "We don't have weapons systems," Geordi said, confused. "I mean, we have defensive phasers, but we're not a warship. We're a deep space explorer. Everyone's a warship when push comes to shove." "Mr. Stark," Picard's voice carried the weight of command. "You have 3 hours and 42 minutes before your reactor reaches critical failure. Commander LaForge is offering to save your life. The question is whether your paranoia is more important than your survival." Stark looked between them, the captain with his absolute certainty, the engineer with his earnest desire to help, the android observing everything with inhuman precision. He thought about the Avengers, scattered or dead. About Pepper, about Morgan, about a universe that might not even exist anymore if the breach he'd been fighting had consumed everything. Friday, full system access. Encryption level 0. "Boss, that's not." "Do it." The AI paused, then complied. Holographic code blossomed into the air, displaying every system, every subroutine, every secret Tony Stark had built into his armor over years of combat and innovation. Geordi's visor flickered as he absorbed the information. Oh, this is incredible. The elegance of the design, the way the nanotech interfaces with the neural link, the adaptive, he caught himself. Okay, I can work with this. Data, I'm going to need your computational speed. We have to model how these systems will function under our physics, then rebuild the operational parameters to compensate. Understood. Beginning calculations now. As the two officers began their work, Stark found himself standing beside the warp core, staring up at the column of barely contained annihilation. A hand touched his shoulder, Deanna Troi, the ship's counselor, her dark eyes filled with empathy he hadn't asked for. "You're afraid," she said softly. "Not of dying. You've made peace with that. You're afraid that you'll never get home." "Betazoid?" Stark guessed. "Empath? Half betazoid. And you don't have to be an empath to see what you're feeling. You're very far from home, surrounded by people who question everything you believe in." She smiled gently. "But you're also relieved. Because for the first time in a long time, someone else is solving the problem. You can let go." Stark wanted to deny it, but the words died in his throat. She was right. For years, he'd been the one holding the world together, building the suits, fighting the battles, making the impossible choices. And now, standing in the heart of a ship that shouldn't exist, he was just a passenger. I don't know how to let go, he admitted quietly. Then perhaps it's time to learn, Picard said, having overheard. The Federation was built on the understanding that no single person, no matter how brilliant or powerful, can bear the weight of civilization alone. We succeed because we work together. Because we trust each other. Trust. Stark laughed bitterly. Captain, where I come from, trust gets you killed. Where you come from, Picard said, is no longer relevant. You're here now. And if you wish to survive, you'll need to adapt. The warp core pulsed, steady and eternal. Geordi and Data worked in synchronized efficiency. And Tony Stark, for perhaps the first time in his adult life, had no choice but to trust someone else with his life. The question was whether that trust would save him, or destroy everything he'd built. The hours blurred together in a symphony of quantum mechanics and subspace physics that challenged even Stark's formidable intellect. He stood beside Geordi and Data at the main engineering console, his armor's holographic interface merging with Federation technology in ways that shouldn't work but somehow did. The problem is elegant in its complexity, Data explained, his fingers moving across controls with positronic precision. Your arc reactor operates by forcing palladium atoms through quantum tunneling at velocities approaching light speed. However, our universe's quantum foam has a different density structure. The probability waves collapse differently here. Which means the palladium is degrading faster than it should, Stark finished, studying the readouts. Friday, show me the decay rate. The hologram shifted, revealing molecular structures breaking down in real time. What should have taken months was happening in hours. The elegant dance of atoms that powered the arc reactor was becoming a death spiral. We could try replacing the palladium with dilithium, Geordi suggested. It's more stable in subspace, might give you better quantum coherence. Dilithium? Stark pulled up Friday's analysis of the warp core. That's your matter-antimatter regulator. The crystal that somehow doesn't explode when you're channeling universe-ending power through it? Correct. Dilithium's unique crystalline structure allows it to regulate the annihilation reaction without being consumed. At least, not quickly. Geordi adjusted his visor. The problem is, I don't know if we can miniaturize it enough for your reactor. And we'd need to completely redesign your power distribution network. Stark was already running calculations, his mind racing through possibilities. Friday, model a dilithium-based arc reactor. Use their warp core specifications as a baseline, scaled down to chest mount size. Working, boss. Preliminary models suggest a 73% chance of catastrophic failure on first ignition. The dilithium matrix won't form properly at that scale without, Friday paused. Actually, wait. If we incorporate the neutron absorption properties into the nanotech housing itself, use the armor as a distributed crystal matrix. That's insane, Geordi breathed, watching the model form. You'd be turning yourself into a living warp core. I've been a living reactor for years, Stark said. What's the difference? The difference, Data interjected, is that warp cores occasionally breach. The resulting explosion would vaporize everything within a 3-kilometer radius. So business as usual. Stark studied the rotating hologram, noting the weak points, the elegant solutions, the dangerous compromises. How much time do I have? 1 hour, 47 minutes, Data replied. However, I must note that Commander LaForge and I can complete the modifications in 1 hour, 12 minutes. The margin for error is acceptable. Acceptable to who? Because I'm the one with the reactor in my chest. To probability calculations based on data. Picard's voice cut through the technical discussion as he entered engineering. Perhaps Mr. Stark would prefer odds expressed in terms he can understand. You have a 91.3% chance of survival, Data said simply. Stark laughed, short and sharp. I've taken worse odds. Let's do it. There is one complication, Picard said, his tone grave. We'll need to transport you to sickbay. Dr. Crusher will need to monitor your vital signs during the procedure. The dilithium integration will require temporarily shutting down your current reactor. The implications hit Stark immediately. The shrapnel. The medical tricorder scans show metallic fragments positioned dangerously close to your heart, data confirmed. Without the electromagnetic field generated by your arc reactor, they will migrate. Dr. Crusher estimates you have approximately 4 minutes before the fragments reach your cardiac tissue. 4 minutes to swap out a reactor that took me months to perfect. Stark's hand moved unconsciously to his chest. That's cutting it close even for me. Dr. Crusher is the finest surgeon in Starfleet, Picard said. And with our medical technology, we can place you in stasis to slow your biological functions. It will buy us additional time. Stasis. You mean suspended animation? Freezing me? Not freezing. Biotemporal suspension. Your cells will continue functioning, but at a significantly reduced rate. Subjectively, the procedure will feel instantaneous. Picard stepped closer, his expression serious. Mr. Stark, I will not lie to you. This is dangerous. But it's the only option that doesn't involve you dying or your reactor exploding and taking half this ship with it. Stark looked around engineering, at Geordi's earnest concern, at Data's analytical calm, at the dozen other crew members who'd been working to save a stranger's life without hesitation. No payment. No contracts. No demands for his technology in exchange. Just, help. It was so alien to his experience that he almost couldn't process it. Boss, Friday's voice was soft in his ear, for what it's worth, their calculations are sound. I've run independent models. This will work. And if it doesn't? Then we tried something new. Isn't that what you always say? That we keep pushing forward? Stark closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his decision was made. All right, Captain. Let's see what 24th century medicine can do. The walk to sickbay felt longer than it was. Crew members paused in their duties to watch the armored figure pass, whispers following in his wake. Word had spread through the ship, there was a stranger aboard, a man from another universe, carrying enough power in his chest to rival a photon torpedo. Sickbay was pristine, all smooth surfaces and glowing displays that made Stark's medical technology look positively medieval. Dr. Beverly Crusher stood waiting, a woman with red hair and the kind of confident competence that reminded Stark painfully of Pepper. Mr. Stark, she said, her voice warm but professional. I'm Dr. Crusher. I've reviewed the scans of your condition. The shrapnel placement is concerning. May I ask how you've survived with it this long? Stubbornness and advanced technology, Stark replied, letting his armor retract fully. The arc reactor glowed in his chest, blue-white light pulsing with his heartbeat. The reactor's electromagnetic field keeps the fragments from moving. It's crude, but it works. Beverly's medical tricorder hummed as she scanned him, her expression shifting from professional interest to genuine alarm. Mr. Stark, some of these fragments are within millimeters of your superior vena cava. One wrong move and... I'm aware of the anatomical nightmare I'm living with, trust me, I've had plenty of time to contemplate my mortality. He settled onto the biobed, the surface adjusting automatically to his body. So what's the plan? You put me under, swap the reactor, and hope I wake up. More or less, though I prefer to think of it as carefully controlled medical intervention rather than hope. Beverly loaded a hypospray. This will induce biotemporal suspension. You won't feel anything. When you wake up, the procedure will be complete. And if something goes wrong? Beverly met his eyes directly. Then I will do everything in my power to save you. That's my oath, Mr. Stark. To preserve life. All life, regardless of origin. Something in Stark's chest, not the reactor, but something deeper, loosened slightly. You people really mean all this, don't you? The helping strangers thing, the noble ideals, the whole, better angels of our nature philosophy. We try, Beverly said simply. We don't always succeed. But we try. Stark nodded slowly. Okay. Okay, I'm ready. Friday, record everything. If this goes wrong, make sure the data gets back home somehow. Recording, boss. For the record, I calculate a 93% survival probability. You've beaten worse odds. Yeah, but I usually have more control over the variables. He looked up at Beverly, at Picard standing near the door, at Geordi and Data preparing their equipment. Guess I'm learning that trust thing you mentioned, Captain. Indeed. Picard moved closer. Mr. Stark, when you wake, we will have much to discuss. About your place in this universe, about your technology, about what happens next. But for now, trust that we will see you through this. Beverly pressed the hypospray to Stark's neck. He felt the cool pressure, then a wave of disorientation as his biological processes began to slow. The world became syrup, sound stretching and deepening. His last conscious thought was how strange it felt to be completely at someone else's mercy. Then darkness. Beverly worked with the efficiency of decades of experience, her hands steady as she manipulated the surgical instruments. The arc reactor's casing opened like a flower, revealing the intricate mechanisms within. Geordi and Data stood on either side, monitoring energy flows, ready to install the new dilithium-based system the moment the old reactor was removed. Vitals are stable, Beverly reported, her eyes on the bio-bed displays. Cardiac function at minimal threshold. We have 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Beginning reactor extraction, Geordi said, his hands moving with practiced care. The old arc reactor came free with a soft magnetic release, and immediately alarms began to sound. The electromagnetic field was gone. The shrapnel began to drift. Shrapnel migration detected, Beverly's voice remained calm despite the urgency. Engaging microtractor beam. A thin beam of light appeared, holding the metallic fragments in place through precise gravitational manipulation. Fragment stabilized. Proceed with installation. Data's positronic speed became crucial. The new reactor, smaller, sleeker, its dilithium matrix glowing with soft pink luminescence, slid into place in Stark's chest cavity. Geordi's fingers flew across the connection interface, linking the new power source to Stark's neural network, to the nanotech in his bloodstream, to the armor's distributed systems. Connections established, Data reported. Initiating power-up sequence in 3, 2, 1. The new reactor flared to life. Not the harsh blue-white of the arc reactor, but a softer, more organic glow, pink and gold, pulsing in rhythm with Stark's slowed heartbeat. The electromagnetic field re-established itself, but different now, harmonized with subspace rather than fighting against it. Reactor online and stable, Geordi said, relief evident in his voice. Power output is actually higher than before. The dilithium matrix is channeling energy more efficiently than palladium ever did. Beverly released the tractor beam carefully, watching as the shrapnel settled back into place, held now by the new reactor's field. Fragments contained. Vital signs strengthening. He's going to make it. She administered the counteragent, bringing Stark out of suspension. His eyes snapped open, immediately alert despite having been under for subjective seconds. His hand went to his chest, feeling the different pulse, the different warmth. It worked, he said, his voice rough. Friday, status report. New reactor operating at 112% of previous maximum output, boss. The dilithium matrix is more stable than anything we've built. I'm detecting zero degradation. This could last, indefinitely. Stark sat up slowly, Beverly's hand steadying him. He looked down at his chest, at the new glow emanating from beneath his skin. I'm running on the same stuff that powers your starship. In a manner of speaking, Data said. Though your reactor is operating at a fraction of the warp core's output. Approximately 0.003%, to be precise. Still feels weird. Stark swung his legs off the biobed, testing his balance. Everything felt better. Clearer. The constant low-level discomfort he'd lived with for years was gone, replaced by a humming vitality that felt almost intoxicating. How is this possible? You just performed what should have been weeks of R&D in under 2 hours. Welcome to the 24th century, Beverly said with a slight smile. We've had a lot of practice fixing the impossible. Picard stepped forward. Mr. Stark, you now carry Federation technology in your chest. Technology that represents centuries of development and scientific achievement. I need to know, what will you do with it? The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Stark understood immediately what Picard was really asking. Will you weaponize it? Will you use it to gain power? Will you prove us right or wrong for saving you? Honestly, Captain. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to get home. Stark stood, his legs steady despite the ordeal. But I'm guessing that's easier said than done. Indeed. The subspace rupture that brought you here has collapsed. Our sensors detect no trace of interdimensional activity. Picard's expression was grave. Mr. Stark, I'm afraid you may be stranded in our universe indefinitely. The word should have hit like a hammer. But Stark just nodded slowly, some part of him having already known. Then I guess we have a lot to talk about. Indeed we do. Starting with what you intend to do now that you're here. The observation lounge felt too quiet, too civilized for the conversation they were about to have. Stark sat across from Picard, with Riker, Data, Troy, and Worf forming a semicircle that felt less like a meeting and more like a tribunal. Through the viewport behind them, stars streamed past in the familiar distortion of warp speed, going nowhere Stark recognized. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Stark said, his fingers steepled in front of him. I'm stuck here. No way home. No contact with my universe. And you want to know what my intentions are? Precisely, Picard said. You possess technology that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in this galaxy. Your armor alone represents weapons capabilities that exceed most planetary defense systems. Your artificial intelligence is more sophisticated than anything outside of Commander Data. And now you carry Federation power generation technology integrated with systems we cannot fully predict. So what, you want me to just hand it over? Disarm myself in a universe I know nothing about? We want to understand what kind of man you are, Riker interjected, his tone less diplomatic than Picard's. Whether you're a threat or an asset. Stark laughed, sharp and humorless. Commander, I've been called both of those things so many times I've lost count. Usually in the same sentence. He leaned back, his new reactor pulsing softly beneath his shirt. You want to know what kind of man I am? I'm the kind who builds weapons for a living, then realizes too late what they're being used for. I'm the kind who thinks he can solve every problem with enough engineering and arrogance. I'm the kind who gets people killed trying to save them. You're also the kind who sacrifices himself to save others, Troy said softly. Her empathic senses had been analyzing him throughout the conversation. I feel tremendous guilt in you, Mr. Stark. Loss. But also determination. You believe in protecting people, even if you question your methods. Therapy by telepathy, Stark muttered. That's new. Counselor Troy is not reading your thoughts, Picard said firmly. She senses emotions, not specific memories. But her point stands. You're clearly not a simple weapons dealer or warmonger. So I ask again, what will you do now? Stark was silent for a long moment, his engineer's mind running through scenarios. He was trapped in a universe with no way home, carrying technology that made him simultaneously valuable and dangerous. The Federation seemed benevolent, but he'd learned long ago that benevolence could mask darker truths. I need to see it, he said finally. Your Federation. What it actually is beyond this ship. You keep talking about post-scarcity, cooperation, exploration, but I've heard pretty words before. I need to see the reality. That can be arranged, Picard said. We're en route to Starbase 234 for a scheduled resupply. You'll have the opportunity to observe Federation civilian life. But understand, Mr. Stark, you'll be under observation as well. Starfleet security will want to assess you. Undoubtedly, Starfleet intelligence will take an interest. Spies. Great. I'm familiar with those. Not spies, Worf rumbled. Protectors. The Federation has enemies, Mr. Stark. The Borg. The Romulans. The Dominion. We must be certain you will not become another threat. The Borg, Stark repeated, his tactical mind immediately flagging the term. Data mentioned them during the reactor procedure. Cybernetic collective, assimilation focused. They sound like a nightmare. They are worse than nightmares. Picard said, and something dark flickered across his face, a memory, a trauma. They do not negotiate. They do not compromise. They assimilate entire civilizations, stripping away individuality and incorporating biological and technological distinctiveness into their collective. I have personal experience with them. The weight in Picard's voice told Stark there was a story there, one with deep scars. And you're worried I might attract their attention. Your technology is unique, Data said. The Borg seek to assimilate that which improves their perfection. A miniaturized power source, advanced artificial intelligence, adaptive nanotechnology, all of these would be of significant interest to the collective. So I'm bait. You're a variable, Riker corrected. One we need to understand and, if possible, integrate into our defensive strategies. Stark's eyes narrowed. And there it is. You don't just want to observe me. You want to use me. We want to ensure that if the Borg do target you, we're prepared, Picard said evenly. Mr. Stark, I will not lie to you. Your presence in this universe creates complications. But it also creates opportunities. Your perspective, your technology, your tactical experience, these could prove valuable. The question is whether you're willing to work with us rather than against us. Work with you doing what, exactly? Joining Starfleet? Wearing one of those pajama uniforms and following orders. That is one option, Picard acknowledged. Though I suspect it's not one you'd find appealing. Alternatively, you could operate as an independent contractor. We've worked with civilians before, scientists, engineers, specialists with unique skills. Independent contractor. Stark rolled the phrase around. Meaning I keep my autonomy but you keep tabs on me. Meaning you assist us when your skills are needed, and we provide you with resources and protection in return. Picard leaned forward. Mr. Stark, like it or not, you're part of this universe now. You can work with us to find your place in it, or you can try to forge your own path alone. But isolation in an unknown galaxy is a dangerous proposition. Before Stark could respond, the ship's red alert klaxon blared. Worf's console lit up with tactical data, his hands moving instantly to assess the threat. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the civilian transport Yosemite, Worf reported. They report main power failure and life support failing. 217 passengers and crew. Time to intercept. At maximum warp, 14 minutes. But Captain, Worf's expression darkened. There's a Ferengi vessel also responding to the distress call. The Daimon has a reputation. Goss. He's known for salvage operations with flexible interpretations of salvage law. Picard was already moving toward the door. All hands to stations. Mr. Worf, hail the Ferengi vessel. Let them know we're responding to the distress call. He paused, looking back at Stark. Mr. Stark, you wanted to see what the Federation stands for. This is it. We respond to those in need, regardless of profit or strategic value. You're welcome to observe from the bridge. Stark followed them out, his mind already analyzing the tactical situation. A disabled civilian transport. A Ferengi salvage ship, which he guessed meant opportunistic scavengers. 200 lives at stake. He'd run this scenario 1,000 times in his universe, usually with hostile forces closing in on vulnerable civilians. The bridge was organized chaos, controlled, professional, but urgent. Picard settled into his command chair, his bearings shifting from diplomat to commander in an instant. "Report," he ordered. The Yosemite suffered a cascade failure in their antimatter containment, data said from Ops. They ejected the warp core to prevent a breach, but the ejection damaged their impulse engines. They're adrift with minimal power. Life support status: critical. They have approximately 43 minutes of breathable atmosphere remaining. And the Ferengi? 5 minutes ahead of us, Worf growled. They're not slowing to assist. They're matching course with the ejected warp core. Stark felt his jaw tighten. They're going for the salvage while people die. The warp core is worth substantial profit on the Ferengi market, Troy explained. To a daimon like Goss, it's an opportunity he won't pass up. That's murder by negligence. That's Ferengi commerce, Riker said grimly. They have no legal obligation to render aid. And if they claim the warp core as salvage, there's little we can do about it under interstellar law. Stark stared at them. You're kidding. You have laws that let people die so someone can profit? We have laws that respect the sovereignty of other cultures, Picard said, though his tone suggested he didn't like it any more than Stark did. The Ferengi Alliance operates under different principles than the Federation. We cannot impose our values on them. So what, you just let those people suffocate while someone steals their property? No, Picard said firmly. We find another way. Mr. Data, can we transport the passengers directly to the Enterprise? Negative, Captain. The Yosemite's power fluctuations are creating transporter interference. We would need to stabilize their systems first, which requires boarding the vessel and manually resetting their power grid. Estimated time, 27 minutes. Which exceeds their life support window. Picard's fingers drummed on his armrest, calculating options. We need to restore power to their ship faster. Mr. LaForge. Geordi's voice came through from engineering. Captain, I could beam over with an emergency power cell, but it would take time to integrate with their systems. We're looking at 20 minutes minimum, and that's if everything goes perfectly. Stark listened to them debate, watched them navigate regulations and procedures and protocols, and felt the old familiar frustration building. 200 people were dying while they talked about proper procedure. He'd seen this before, good people constrained by rules while lives hung in the balance. I can do it, he said. The bridge turned to look at him. I can restore power in 5 minutes, Stark continued. My armor has arc welders, plasma cutters, and Friday can interface with any computer system. I can bypass their damaged circuits, reroute power from auxiliary systems, and get life support back online before your boarding party even gets there. You don't know their systems, Geordi said over the comm. I'm a fast learner. Friday, you got their schematics from the distress signal. Already mapped their power grid, boss. Outdated design, honestly. I can have you through their problems in 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Worf stood, his posture aggressive. Captain, we cannot allow an unknown operative to board a Federation civilian vessel unsupervised. Then supervise me, Stark shot back. Come with me. Bring security. I don't care. But while you're debating protocol, 200 people are running out of air. Picard studied Stark for a long moment, weighing risks, calculating probabilities. Then he nodded. Mr. Worf, you will accompany Mr. Stark. Ensure the safety of the Yosemite's passengers and crew. And ensure Mr. Stark doesn't do anything that violates Federation law. Understood. Worf's hand moved to his phaser. If you attempt anything suspicious. Yeah, you'll shoot me. I get it. Stark's armor began materializing from the nanotech stored in his body, the red and gold plates sliding into place. "Can we go save some lives now?" They materialized in the Yosemite's engineering section, a cramped, dark space lit only by emergency lighting. The air was already thin, recycled too many times. Stark's sensors picked up elevated carbon dioxide levels, people showing signs of hypoxia throughout the ship. Friday, route power from the emergency batteries to life support. Use the armor's reactor as a booster if needed. On it, boss. Stark's hands became a blur of motion, pulling access panels, rerouting circuits, his armor's tools interfacing with systems that were decades behind his technology but followed the same basic principles. Worf watched, his disruptor drawn but lowering incrementally as he witnessed the efficiency of Stark's work. "You have done this before," Worf observed. "Saved people?" "Yeah, it's kind of my thing." Stark connected the final circuit. "Friday, bring it online." The lights flickered, then stabilized. The air circulation systems hummed to life. Throughout the ship, passengers gasped as fresh oxygen flooded compartments that had been turning into coffins. "Life support restored," Friday announced. 217 life signs stable. Stark allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he turned to Worf. "So, Commander. Still think I'm just a weapons dealer?" Worf's expression was unreadable. "I think you are complicated, Mr. Stark." "Perhaps that is enough." Starbase 234 hung in space like a massive orbital flower, its docking pylons extending from a central hub that housed over 50,000 residents, Federation citizens, civilian contractors, traders, and visitors from dozens of worlds. Stark watched through the observation lounge window as the Enterprise approached, his engineers cataloging the elegant efficiency of the station's design. "It's bigger than I expected," he admitted. "Starbase 234 serves as a major hub for this sector," Picard explained, standing beside him. "Scientific research, diplomatic conferences, civilian commerce, and Starfleet operations all coexist here. You'll find it's quite different from military installations in your universe. No weapons emplacements. No defensive perimeter. You're really committed to this whole, we're not a military, thing." "We have shields and defensive capabilities," Picard corrected. "But our primary purpose is not warfare. You'll see that more clearly once we're aboard." The transport to the starbase was uneventful, though Stark noticed the security officers maintaining a discreet but constant presence around him. Worf's doing, undoubtedly. He couldn't blame them. If someone from another dimension appeared in his world carrying advanced tech, he'd have kept them under surveillance too. The starbase promenade was a revelation. A massive open space that curved upward in both directions, creating the illusion of an indoor city stretching into infinity. Shops lined the walkways, not stores, Stark realized, but replicator terminals and artisan workshops. People moved through the space with unhurried purpose, humans mixing with species Stark didn't recognize. Blue-skinned Andorians, severe-faced Vulcans, the spotted Trill, others whose anatomy defied easy categorization. "This is your civilian sector?" Stark asked, watching a group of children, human and alien, playing near a fountain that defied gravity. "It's like a shopping mall designed by utopians. Most goods can be replicated," Picard explained as they walked. "The shops you see offer unique items, artwork, crafted goods, specialty foods that replication can't quite duplicate. People come here for the experience as much as the acquisition." Stark stopped at a viewport overlooking a garden level below. Real plants, not holographic, growing in carefully cultivated beds. People sat reading, conversing, simply existing without the frantic energy he associated with public spaces. "Where's the advertising? The billboards? The constant noise telling you to buy things?" "There is no advertising because there is nothing to sell," Data said, having accompanied them as an unofficial guide. "The Federation operates on a post-scarcity economic model. Basic needs are provided for all citizens. Advanced goods can be replicated. Currency, in the traditional sense, does not exist. Everyone just gets what they need. For free. Correct. Individuals pursue personal fulfillment rather than material accumulation. Scientists research for knowledge's sake. Artists create for expression. Engineers build because they wish to solve problems. Stark's worldview, built on decades of capitalism and competition, struggled to process the concept. But who decides who gets what? Who allocates resources? Resources are allocated based on necessity and request, Data explained. If you require a quantum microscope for research, you request one. If you want to replicate a meal, you use a replicator. The system trusts individuals to self-regulate. And nobody abuses it. Nobody hoards resources or games the system. Some do, Picard admitted. Human nature, an alien nature, includes selfishness. But when basic needs are guaranteed, the motivation for hoarding diminishes. Most people find that contributing to society provides more fulfillment than accumulation. They passed a section where Ferengi traders had set up what looked like traditional market stalls, haggling with customers over what Stark assumed were rare goods that couldn't be replicated. The Ferengi were immediately recognizable from the cultural briefing Friday had compiled: large ears, sharp teeth, and an unmistakable aura of mercantile aggression. "I thought you said there was no economy," Stark noted. "The Federation has no internal economy based on currency," Picard clarified. "But we trade with other cultures who do use currency. The Ferengi Alliance, for instance, operates entirely on profit-driven principles. They find our economic model disturbing." As if summoned by the mention, a Ferengi in elaborate robes detached from a nearby group and approached them with the confident stride of someone who smelled opportunity. His eyes fixed immediately on Stark's armor, and his expression shifted to something between avarice and calculation. Well, the Ferengi said, his voice carrying a nasal quality that set Stark's teeth on edge. "An unusual humanoid in unusual armor. You must be the dimensional traveler everyone's whispering about. Daimon Goss, at your service. I represent several interested parties who would be very interested in discussing opportunities." "Not interested," Stark said flatly. "Oh, but you haven't heard my offer yet." Goss's smile revealed too many teeth. "Your technology is clearly advanced. Unique. I could connect you with buyers willing to pay substantial latinum for even a small sample. Enough to set you up quite comfortably in this universe." "Mr. Stark's technology is not for sale," Picard said firmly. "With respect, Captain, the human can speak for himself." Goss turned back to Stark, his eyes gleaming. "Rule of acquisition number 3, never spend more for an acquisition than you have to. But in this case, I'm prepared to be very generous. Your armor alone would revolutionize personal defense systems across the quadrant." "Let me guess," Stark said. "You're the guy who went for the warp core instead of helping those people on the Yosemite." Goss's expression didn't change. "Rule of acquisition 62, the riskier the road, the greater the profit. That warp core was legal salvage from an ejected ship component. I broke no laws. You let people die. I let Starfleet do their job while I did mine." Goss spread his hands. "You're new here, so let me educate you. The Federation likes to pretend they've evolved beyond material concerns, but they still need resources, still need trade, still need people like me to do the work they consider beneath them. Your technology could make you wealthy beyond measure, if you're smart enough to work with the right partners." Stark felt his jaw tighten. He'd dealt with plenty of arms dealers and opportunists in his life, but there was something particularly galling about someone so blatant in their amorality. "I'm not interested in partners who value profit over lives." "Then you'll fit right in with these Federation types," Goss said with a dismissive wave. "They'll smother you with their high-minded principles while restricting everything you can do. But when you get tired of their rules and regulations, come find me. My offer stands." He departed with a flourish, leaving Stark staring after him with undisguised distaste. "Charming fellow," Stark muttered. "The Ferengi can be challenging," Picard acknowledged. "But they're also valuable trading partners and, occasionally, surprising allies. Their culture values profit above all, but that's not the same as evil. Just, different. Different. Right." Stark watched Goss disappear into the crowd. "In my world, we call people like that war profiteers. In this universe, we call them Ferengi," Data said simply. "Cultural relativism is an essential component of Federation philosophy. We must accept that other species operate under different moral frameworks. Even when those frameworks get people killed. Even then," Picard said quietly. "Unless they violate the sovereignty of Federation worlds or threaten galactic peace. It's an imperfect system, Mr. Stark. But it's the best we've managed." They continued through the promenade, and Stark found himself increasingly disoriented by the casual mingling of species, the absence of poverty or desperation, the sense that everyone here had simply enough. He'd built his fortune in a world of scarcity, where competition drove innovation and profit motivated progress. This place operated on completely opposite principles, and it seemed to work. "Friday," he sub-vocalized, "you seeing this?" "I am, boss. I'm also detecting approximately 17 surveillance devices tracking our movement. Starfleet security is watching you closely." "Can't blame them." They reached a conference room overlooking the promenade, where a Starfleet admiral waited, a severe-faced human woman with commander's pips and the bearing of someone who'd seen combat. She rose as they entered, her assessment of Stark clinical and thorough. "Mr. Stark," she said without preamble. "I'm Admiral Nechayev. Starfleet Command has asked me to evaluate your situation." "My situation," Stark repeated. "That's a polite way of saying you want to figure out if I'm a threat. We want to understand what you represent and what your intentions are." Nechayev gestured to the seats. "Please. This doesn't need to be adversarial." They sat, though the positioning felt deliberately strategic, Stark on one side of the table, Picard and Nechayev on the other, with Data standing near the door in a way that could be protective or preventative depending on how things went. "Your actions aboard the Yosemite were noted," Nechayev continued. "You saved 217 lives by acting decisively when our protocols would have been slower. That speaks well of your character. However, the technology you possess raises significant concerns. Let me save us both some time, Admiral. You want to know if I'm going to sell my tech, weaponize it, or use it to destabilize your nice peaceful Federation? The answer is no on all counts. I'm just trying to figure out how to exist in a universe where everything I knew is gone." Nechayev's expression softened fractionally. "I understand that your situation is difficult, Mr. Stark. But you must understand ours as well. We're responsible for the safety of hundreds of billions of Federation citizens. Your technology, in the wrong hands, could shift the balance of power in this quadrant. The Romulans would kill to acquire it. The Cardassians would torture you for its secrets. And the Borg," she paused. "The Borg would assimilate you and everyone around you to possess what you've built. So what are you suggesting? That I dismantle everything that keeps me alive? I'm suggesting that you work with us to ensure your technology remains secure. That means oversight. Restrictions on its use. And, potentially, contribution to Federation defense initiatives." Stark's eyes narrowed. "You want me to work for you?" "I want you to work with us," Nechayev corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you want to control me and exploit my tech while pretending it's for the greater good." "Mr. Stark," Picard began, but Nechayev raised a hand. "Let's be direct," the Admiral said. "You're a wild card in a delicate political situation. The Klingon Empire has observers on this station who've already reported your presence to the High Council. The Romulans have intelligence assets here who are undoubtedly planning how to acquire you. And somewhere in the dark corners of this quadrant, the Borg have detected the unique energy signature of your modified reactor. You are, whether you intended to be or not, a target. The words hit harder than Stark wanted to admit. He'd spent years as a target in his own universe, terrorists, rival corporations, alien invasions, but at least there he'd understood the playing field. Here, he was operating blind, surrounded by factions he didn't understand and threats he couldn't predict. "So what do you want from me?" he asked quietly. "Cooperation," Nechayev said. "Share your technical specifications with Starfleet R&D, allow us to develop countermeasures in case hostile forces acquire similar technology. Agree to consultation on security matters where your expertise might prove valuable. In exchange, we provide you with protection, resources, and legal standing within the Federation." Legal standing. As what? As a Federation civilian specialist with provisional citizenship status. You'd have rights, protections, and freedom of movement within Federation space. But you'd also have responsibilities. And limitations. Stark looked at Picard, searching for guidance, then realized with a jolt that he was actually asking for someone else's opinion. That alone showed how much his situation had changed him. "What do you think, Captain?" Picard met his gaze steadily. "I think the Admiral's offer is fair. But I also think you should take time to consider it. You've been in this universe less than a day, Mr. Stark. Making permanent decisions under duress is rarely wise." "Captain Picard is correct," Data added. "However, I calculate a 73% probability that hostile forces will attempt to acquire you or your technology within the next 48 hours. Accepting Federation protection would significantly improve your survival odds." "Always with the cheerful statistics," Stark muttered. Then, to Nechayev, "I need time to think. And I need to see more of this universe before I commit to anything." Nechayev nodded slowly. "You have 24 hours, Mr. Stark. After that, with or without your cooperation, Starfleet will take steps to ensure your technology doesn't fall into enemy hands. I'd prefer those steps to be collaborative rather than coercive." The threat was delivered professionally, almost gently, but it was still a threat. Stark recognized the tactic: give someone an ultimatum while making it sound like a choice. "Understood, Admiral. I'll have my answer in 24 hours." As they left the conference room, Stark felt the weight of too many eyes on him. The surveillance devices Friday had detected. The Starfleet officers maintaining tactical positions throughout the promenade. The civilians who stared at his armor with curiosity or fear. He'd escaped one dimension only to become a prisoner, however polite, in another. "Captain," he said quietly, "is there anywhere on this station where I can just think? Without being watched every second?" Picard considered, then nodded. "Holodeck 7. I'll reserve it for your use. You'll have privacy there. What you create in the holodeck is your own business, within safety parameters." A holodeck. That's the virtual reality technology Data mentioned. Correct. Holographic matter and force fields creating completely immersive environments. You could recreate anywhere you've been, design new locations, or simply exist in peaceful solitude. "I'll take the solitude," Stark said. "I've got a lot to process." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say, was how desperately he needed to see something familiar. How the weight of being the only person from his entire universe was crushing him in ways that had nothing to do with physics or politics. How, for the first time in years, Tony Stark felt truly, utterly alone. Holodeck 7 materialized around Stark in perfect detail, the interior of his Malibu workshop, recreated from Friday's memory files. The familiar workbenches, the holographic displays, the organized chaos of half-finished projects. Even the coffee maker in the corner, perpetually brewing something too strong to be healthy. It wasn't real, just photons and force fields, but it was close enough to hurt. He stood in the center of his workshop that wasn't his workshop, in a universe that wasn't his universe, and felt the weight of everything finally crash down on him. Friday, run a probability analysis. What are the actual odds I ever get home? The AI was silent for a moment, an eternity in processing time. Based on available data regarding dimensional physics in this universe, less than 2%, boss. The subspace rupture that brought you here was a unique confluence of events. Recreating it would require technology and energy expenditures that may not exist in this reality. So I'm stuck. It would appear so. Stark sat heavily on the workbench, his hands hanging between his knees. Pepper was gone. Morgan was gone. The Avengers, what was left of them, gone. Everyone and everything he'd built his life around, just erased. Not dead, but might as well be, separated by an unbridgeable dimensional gulf. Run me through what we know about this universe's factions, he said, forcing himself to focus on problems he could solve. If I'm going to be stuck here, I need to understand the players. Friday projected holographic profiles into the air, faces, ship schematics, territorial maps. The United Federation of Planets appears to be the dominant political entity in this region, over 150 member worlds operating under democratic principles and collective defense agreements. Starfleet serves as their exploratory, scientific, and defensive organization. Despite claims of peaceful intent, their military capabilities are substantial. Yeah, I noticed. What about the others? The Klingon, Romulans, these Borg things. The Klingon Empire, warrior culture, approximately 30 major worlds, honor-based social hierarchy. Technologically equivalent to the Federation, though their focus is military rather than scientific. Current political status, treaty allies with the Federation, though historically antagonistic. A Klingon face appeared, all ridged forehead and aggressive bearing. Stark studied it, noting the pride in the posture, the barely contained violence. They're the ones who might try to recruit me. Possible. Your combat capabilities and tactical experience would earn respect in their culture. However, their technology is crude compared to yours, they'd likely view you as a potential weapon to acquire rather than an equal partner. Next. The Romulan Star Empire, secretive, strategic, estimated 50 to 70 worlds though exact numbers are classified. Genetic cousins to Vulcans but culturally divergent. Primary intelligence agency is the Tal Shiar, known for ruthless efficiency. Current political status, hostile to the Federation, though open warfare is sporadic. The Romulan profile showed a face almost Vulcan but with a predatory calculation that set them apart. These are the ones who torture me for my tech. Affirmative. Romulan intelligence doctrine prioritizes acquisition of strategic assets through any means necessary. They have a documented history of kidnapping, interrogation, and technological espionage. You represent exactly the kind of prize they'd invest significant resources to obtain. Stark's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, to the reactor pulsing beneath his skin. And the Borg? The image that appeared made his blood run cold. Gray-skinned humanoid studded with technological implants, one eye replaced by a glowing red optical device, tubes and wires threaded through flesh. Not individuals, components. The Borg Collective, origin unknown, extent unknown, estimated to control thousands of worlds across the galaxy. A hive mind of cybernetically enhanced beings operating with singular purpose, achieving perfection through assimilation of biological and technological distinctiveness. They do not negotiate, do not retreat, and cannot be reasoned with. Resistance is considered futile. Jesus. Stark stared at the drone's face, searching for any hint of the person who'd been before assimilation. Nothing. Just cold mechanical efficiency. They're like a virus. A technological plague that consumes everything it touches. Accurate assessment. Federation encounters with the Borg have resulted in catastrophic losses. The Battle of Wolf 359 saw 39 Federation starships destroyed with minimal Borg casualties. Captain Picard himself was temporarily assimilated and designated Locutus of Borg before being recovered. The psychological trauma remains evident in his command decisions. That explained the darkness Stark had seen in Picard's eyes when the Borg were mentioned. The captain had been one of those things, stripped of identity and used as a weapon against his own people. It was a violation Stark couldn't fully comprehend. What would happen if they assimilated me? Your arc reactor technology, nanotech systems, and AI architecture would be incorporated into the collective. Millions of drones would gain access to miniaturized power generation and adaptive armor capabilities. The strategic advantage would be catastrophic for the Federation. So Nechayev was right. I'm a walking doomsday weapon if the wrong people get their hands on me. Correct. However, you also represent a potential defensive advantage. Your technology operates on principles outside of Federation database. The Borg adapt to known weapons through technological analysis and countermeasure development. Your systems might provide a tactical edge precisely because they're unknown. Stark stood, pacing the holographic workshop. So my options are, join the Federation and let them put a leash on me, get captured by the Romulans and tortured, recruited by the Klingon and turned into a weapon, or assimilated by the Borg and become part of a cybernetic horror show. Those are some great choices. There is a fifth option, boss. You could go independent, operate outside Federation space, avoid major political entities, and maintain complete autonomy. As a fugitive. Constantly running, never safe, always looking over my shoulder. Freedom has costs. Yeah, it does. Stark stopped pacing, staring at nothing. In his universe, he'd had the luxury of choosing his battles. The Avengers operated independently because they had the power to do so. But here, he was one man with advanced technology in a galaxy full of civilizations that made Earth's nations look like children playing with sticks. A chime interrupted his thoughts, someone requesting entry to the holodeck. Friday displayed the visitor's identity, Counselor Deanna Troi. Let her in, Stark said, unsure whether he wanted company or solitude but recognizing that he needed perspective from someone who understood this universe. The holodeck doors opened, and Troi stepped inside, her expression carefully neutral as she took in the recreated workshop. This is where you worked. In your universe? One of the places. I had workshops all over, but this was home. Stark gestured to the familiar space. Or at least, a holographic memory of home. I'm not sure which is more depressing, that I lost everything, or that I can recreate it perfectly and it still feels empty. Troi moved through the space, her empathic senses reading the emotional resonance even in the holographic furniture. You're grieving. Not just for people you've lost, but for your entire reality. That's a unique kind of loss that most beings never experience. Lucky me. I'm not here to offer platitudes, Mr. Stark. I'm here because Captain Picard is concerned that you're about to make a decision based on despair rather than reason. The captain sent you to talk me into accepting the Admiral's offer. The captain sent me to ensure you're thinking clearly. Troi sat on a workbench, her posture deliberately casual. You're under immense pressure, stranded in an unknown universe, being courted by various factions, facing threats you don't fully understand. In that state, people often make choices that serve short-term emotional needs rather than long-term well-being. So what, you think I should just roll over and let Starfleet control me? I think you should consider what you actually want, separate from fear and trauma. Troi's dark eyes were penetrating but kind. What did you do in your universe, Mr. Stark? Before you became a dimensional refugee? I built things. Protected people. Tried to prevent disasters and cleaned up the ones I couldn't prevent. The words came easier than expected. I was an Avenger. Part of a team that stood between Earth and whatever threatened it. You were a protector. Someone who used their gifts to help others, even at personal cost. Troi leaned forward slightly. That core identity hasn't changed, Mr. Stark. You're still that person. The question is whether you can be that person here, in this universe, under these circumstances. The Federation doesn't want protectors. They want scientists and diplomats and people who follow orders. The Federation wants people who contribute to the collective good. There are many ways to do that. Troy paused, choosing her words carefully. You're viewing this as a binary choice, either submit to authority or fight against it. But there are gradations. Nuances. You could work with Starfleet without surrendering your autonomy. Consult without joining. Contribute without being controlled. Until the Borg show up and try to assimilate me. Or the Romulans kidnap me. Or the Klingon decide I'm more valuable dead than alive. All possible outcomes, Troy acknowledged. But equally possible if you try to go independent. At least working with the Federation provides resources and support. You wouldn't be facing these threats alone. I've always faced threats alone, Counselor. Or with a small team that understood the risks. I don't know how to operate within a bureaucracy that questions every decision and requires committee approval for action. Then perhaps it's time to learn a different way. Troy stood, moving closer. I sense tremendous loneliness in you, Mr. Stark. You're surrounded by people, but you've spent so long being the one with the answers, the one who solves problems, that you've forgotten how to let others help carry the weight. The observation cut deeper than Stark wanted to admit. He'd been alone in his head for so long, making decisions, bearing consequences, trusting his own judgment above all others, that the idea of genuine collaboration felt foreign. What if I make the wrong choice, he asked quietly. What if I trust the wrong people and it gets people killed? I've done that before, Counselor. I've built weapons that destroyed cities. I've made calls that cost lives. I can't. You can't guarantee perfect outcomes. None of us can. Troy's voice was gentle but firm. The difference is whether you face uncertainty alone or with allies. Captain Picard isn't asking you to surrender your judgment, Mr. Stark. He's asking you to trust that maybe, just maybe, other people's judgment has value too. Before Stark could respond, Friday's alert chimed, urgent, alarmed. Boss, we have a problem. Multiple problems. I'm detecting a Romulan warbird decloaking near the station. An energy signatures consistent with Borg transwarp conduits forming at the system's edge. We have incoming hostiles on multiple vectors. Stark's mind shifted instantly from philosophical debate to tactical analysis. Time to contact. Romulan vessel is already in weapons range. Borg cube will arrive in approximately 11 minutes. Troy's expression shifted to alarm as her own communicator chirped. Troy to Enterprise. I'm reading your concern, Captain. I'm with Mr. Stark now. Counselor, get Mr. Stark to the Enterprise immediately, Picard's voice was clipped, urgent. We have a situation. The Romulans are demanding we turn over the dimensional traveler. And our long-range sensors have detected a Borg cube on approach vector. They appear to be targeting this station specifically. They're here for me, Stark said, the reality settling like ice in his gut. Both of them. It would appear so, Picard confirmed. Mr. Stark, I need you on the Enterprise. Now. Whatever you decide about your future, it will be meaningless if you're assimilated or captured in the next hour. Stark looked at Troy, then at his holographic workshop, then at the arc reactor glowing in his chest, the fusion of his universe's technology and this universe's power source. He'd wanted time to think, to choose his path carefully. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. Computer, end program, he said. The workshop vanished, leaving them standing in an empty holodeck grid. Stark's armor materialized fully around him, the red and gold plates sliding into place with mechanical precision. Counselor, looks like philosophy hour is over. Time to see if I can protect people in this universe the same way I did in mine. They ran for the transporter pad, racing against threats that had crossed light years specifically to acquire or destroy him. Behind them, alarms began to sound throughout the station, red alert, all personnel to emergency stations, civilian evacuation protocols initiating. Tony Stark had wanted to see what this universe stood for. He was about to find out, in the crucible of combat, where principles met reality and ideals faced the cold calculation of survival. The Borg were coming. The Romulans were here. And a man from another dimension was about to become the flashpoint for a battle that could reshape the entire sector. The Enterprise bridge was controlled chaos when Stark materialized from the transporter beam. Stations lit with tactical data, klaxons wailing, crew members moving with practiced urgency. Through the view screen, he could see Starbase 234 and, hanging in space like a predatory bird, a massive vessel that seemed to shimmer in and out of visibility, the Romulan warbird. "Mr. Stark, welcome back," Picard said without turning from the view screen. "I apologize for the abrupt end to your contemplation, but it seems your presence has attracted unwanted attention." "The Romulans are hailing us," Worf reported, his voice tight with controlled aggression. "Commander Sela demands we surrender the dimensional anomaly or face immediate consequences." On screen. The view screen shifted to show a Romulan woman in military uniform, severe features, blonde hair swept back, and eyes that calculated threat assessment with every glance. Her resemblance to someone was striking, though Stark couldn't place who. "Captain Picard," Sela said, her voice carrying aristocratic disdain. How predictable that Starfleet would harbor a strategic asset of this magnitude. The Dimensional Traveler possesses technology that could shift the balance of power in this quadrant. The Romulan Star Empire claims salvage rights. Salvage rights? Picard's tone was ice. "Mr. Stark is a sentient being, not property to be claimed." "He is a weapon," Sela countered. "And weapons belong to those strong enough to wield them. You have 10 minutes to transfer him to my ship, or I will take him by force." "The choice is yours, Captain." The screen went dark. Picard's jaw tightened fractionally, the only outward sign of his anger. "Captain, the warbird is charging weapons," Worf reported. "They're targeting our shields and propulsion systems. They want to disable us, not destroy us." "Because they need me intact," Stark said, moving to stand beside Picard. "They want what's in my head and in my chest. Blowing me up defeats the purpose." "Precisely." Picard turned to face him fully. "Mr. Stark, I will not surrender you to the Romulans. However, our options are limited. The warbird outguns us significantly in a static battle, and we cannot evacuate the starbase population before they attack. So we need to either fight them off or find a way to make me not worth taking." Stark's tactical mind was already running scenarios. "What about the Borg? Where are they?" 7 minutes out, data reported from Ops. "The cube is traveling at transwarp velocity. When it arrives, it will represent a threat magnitude several orders beyond the Romulan vessel. Can we use that? Turn the Romulans and Borg against each other?" "The Borg do not engage in conventional warfare," Picard said grimly. "They will ignore the Romulans unless directly impeded. Their objective is singular, assimilate the target. Which, in this case, is you." Stark felt the weight of thousands of lives hanging on his next decision. The starbase held 50,000 people. The Enterprise crew numbered over 1,000. All of them at risk because he'd fallen through a dimensional hole at the wrong place and wrong time. "What if I'm not here?" he said suddenly. "What if we fake my destruction? Make both of them think I'm dead?" "They would scan for your remains," Data said. "The unique energy signature of your reactor is detectable across significant distances. We would need to create a false signature, then destroy it convincingly." "I can do that." Stark's fingers flew across his armor's interface. "Friday, can you create a duplicate reactor signature using the Enterprise's power systems?" "Theoretically, yes. I'd need to tap into their warp core, create a resonance cascade that mimics your reactor's quantum signature, then overload it dramatically. It would look like you self-destructed to avoid capture." "Do it." "Data, I'll need your help coordinating with Enterprise systems." "Captain." Data looked to Picard for authorization. Picard studied Stark for a long moment, then nodded. Make it so. But Mr. Stark, what happens after? You'll still be aboard this ship when both the Romulans and Borg scan for survivors. Which is why I won't be. Stark was already planning 3 moves ahead, the way he'd done countless times in his own universe. You have shuttlecraft, right? Small vessels that can break away from the ship. Yes, though a shuttle would be detected immediately. Not if it's cloaked in the sensor interference from the reactor overload. Friday, can we mask a shuttle's signature in the chaos? For approximately 90 seconds, yes. After that, the Borg's sensor resolution will cut through any interference. 90 seconds to get clear of the immediate area and hide somewhere the Borg won't look. Stark turned to Picard. Captain, I need a shuttle and a destination where I can lay low until this blows over. Somewhere off the grid. There's a nebula 17 light-years from here, the Matara Nebula. Heavy radiation, sensor interference, difficult to navigate. If you could reach it. I can reach it if someone buys me time. Stark looked at the view screen, where the Romulan warbird hung like a sword of Damocles. Captain, I'm about to ask you to do something that goes against every diplomatic instinct you have. I need you to start a fight. Picard's eyebrow rose fractionally. You want me to engage the Romulans? I want you to make them think you're protecting me at all costs. Refuse their demands, act defiant, maybe fire a warning shot across their bow. Make it look like you'd rather die than hand me over. That won't be acting, Picard said quietly. I will not surrender a sentient being to the Romulans under any circumstances. Good. Sell it. Make Sela believe you're willing to fight. Then, when my reactor explodes, you act devastated. Accuse her of forcing your hand, of making me choose death over capture. She'll believe it because it fits the narrative she already has about Starfleet's self-righteous nobility. Riker stepped forward, concern evident. And when the Borg arrive? They won't be fooled by emotional appeals. The Borg will scan for my signature, find nothing but debris, and move on to their next objective. They're efficient. They won't waste resources pursuing a dead target when there are living civilizations to assimilate. Unless they detect deception, Data said. Borg analytical capabilities are formidable. If they suspect subterfuge, they will expand their search parameters exponentially. Then we make it convincing. Data, how long until the Borg arrive? 5 minutes, 42 seconds. That's our window. Captain, I need you to trust me. I've run ops like this before, misdirection, false flags, making enemies think they've won while actually playing them. It's not Starfleet's style, but it works. Picard was silent, his command experience warring with Stark's unconventional tactics. Finally, he nodded. Commander Data, assist Mr. Stark with the reactor signature duplication. Mr. LaForge, prepare Shuttlecraft 2 for immediate departure, full stealth configuration. Mr. Worf, prepare to engage the Romulans on my order. Captain, regulations require. I'm aware of the regulations, Mr. Worf. I'm also aware that 50,000 lives depend on our actions in the next 5 minutes. Load weapons. The bridge transformed into a precision instrument of controlled aggression. Stark worked alongside Data at the ops console, their combined intellects, organic genius and positronic brilliance, creating a false reactor signature that pulsed in perfect mimicry of his own. Romulan vessel is hailing again, Worf reported. On screen. Sela's face reappeared, her expression hardened. Your time is up, Picard. Transfer the dimensional traveler now, or I will fire on your ship and the starbase. Commander Sela, I will not comply with your illegal demands. Mr. Stark is under Federation protection. If you attack this vessel or the starbase, you will be committing an act of war. War. Sela laughed, sharp and humorless. The Federation has grown soft, Picard. You hide behind your principles while the galaxy moves on without you. I'm offering you a chance to avoid bloodshed. Don't be foolish enough to refuse. The only fool here is someone who threatens a Federation starship in Federation space. Picard's voice carried steel. I suggest you withdraw before this situation escalates beyond your ability to control it. Sila's eyes narrowed. So be it. Fire. The Warbird's disruptors lanced out, green energy hammering into the Enterprise's shields. The ship shuddered, and consoles sparked. Shields holding at 87%, Worf reported. Returning fire. Orange phaser beams struck the Warbird's shields, and the space between the two vessels became a light show of destructive energy. Stark felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet, real combat, not the clean simulations of the holodeck. Reactor signature is ready, Data said. On your command, I can overload the false signature and create the appearance of a catastrophic detonation. Wait for my signal. Stark was already moving toward the turbolift. Captain, keep her occupied for 30 more seconds. Where are you going? Picard demanded. To die dramatically. Friday, transfer all non-essential functions to autonomous operation. I want you running the shuttle systems in case I'm busy not actually dying. Already configured, boss. Shuttle 2 is prepped and waiting in the shuttle bay. Stark reached the turbolift, then paused, looking back at the bridge crew. These people who'd saved his life, argued with his philosophy, and now risked themselves to protect him despite knowing him for less than a day. Captain, he said, thanks for not actually surrendering me to the psychotic Romulan. I appreciate that. We'll discuss your gratitude when you return from the dead, Mr. Stark. Go. The turbolift doors closed, and Stark descended toward the shuttle bay at maximum speed. Through his armor's sensors, he tracked the battle above, the Enterprise and Warbird trading fire, shields fluctuating, both ships taking damage but neither giving ground. Friday, how long until the Borg arrive? 2 minutes, 18 seconds. Boss, once they detect the cube, both the Enterprise and the Romulans will have bigger problems than your reactor signature. That's what I'm counting on. Nobody wants to be here when the Borg show up. The shuttle bay was empty except for one small craft, Shuttlecraft 2, about the size of a large van, with impulse engines and basic warp capability. Stark climbed aboard, his armor interfacing with the controls as Friday took primary navigation. Ready when you are, he said over the comm to the bridge. Mr. Data, initiate overload sequence, Picard ordered. On the Enterprise's main engineering deck, the false reactor signature suddenly spiked, energy readings going critical, quantum cascade failure, all the signatures of an arc reactor suffering catastrophic destabilization. Alarms throughout the ship began screaming warnings of imminent detonation. Captain, Mr. Stark's reactor is overloading. Geordi's voice carried genuine alarm. He'd been briefed on the plan but sold the panic perfectly. I can't contain it. He's going to explode. Evasive maneuvers. Picard ordered. Get us clear. The Enterprise peeled away from the Warbird, engines firing at maximum burn. On Sila's ship, sensors detected the same catastrophic readings. The dimensional traveler is self-destructing, her science officer reported. Energy spike approaching critical mass. Retreat. Sila ordered. I want distance between us and that detonation. Both ships accelerated away as the false signature reached terminal cascade. Then, in a brilliant flash that registered across the electromagnetic spectrum, the reactor exploded, a carefully controlled energy release that mimicked exactly what would happen if Stark's modified arc reactor had suffered complete failure. In the chaos of that explosion, with sensors blinded by exotic particle releases and subspace interference, no one noticed a single small shuttlecraft slip away from the Enterprise's lower shuttle bay and accelerate toward the system's edge at maximum impulse. Clean getaway, Stark breathed. Friday, keep us under sensor threshold. Passive systems only. Confirmed. Though boss, the Borg cube just dropped out of transwarp. They're performing intensive scans of the debris field. Through the shuttle's rear sensors, Stark watched the cube materialize, a massive structure that dwarfed both the Enterprise and the Warbird, angular and wrong, covered in technological protrusions that made it look like a geometric tumor. Green energy pulsed through its systems, and cutting beams extended from its surface, methodically dissecting the debris from the explosion. "They're analyzing every fragment," Friday reported. "Looking for biological remains, technological components, anything that confirms your destruction. Will they find enough?" Data was thorough. He replicated fragments of your armor, biological matter with your approximate genetic markers, even pieces of the arc reactor casing. It won't hold up to detailed analysis, but for a field scan, it should be sufficient. The cube's cutting beams continued their work for what felt like hours but was actually 90 seconds. Then, abruptly, the beams retracted. The cube hung in space for another moment, as if contemplating, then accelerated away from the system at transwarp velocity. "They bought it," Stark said, hardly believing their luck. "They actually bought it." Biological and technological distinctiveness, destroyed, Friday said in a flat imitation of Borg speech. Assimilation no longer viable. The collective has moved on. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watched the Borg cube disappear into a transwarp conduit, then turned to face the Romulan warbird still maintaining position near the starbase. "It would appear, Commander Sela, that your aggressive posturing has resulted in the destruction of the very prize you sought to claim," he said, his voice heavy with controlled fury. "Mr. Stark chose death over capture. I hope you find that outcome satisfactory." Sela's expression was unreadable. "The Romulan Star Empire does not mourn the loss of potential assets, Captain. We adapt and seek new opportunities. Though I will note for the record, you could have prevented his death by simply complying with our lawful request. There was nothing lawful about your demands. You will withdraw from Federation space immediately, or I will file a formal complaint with the Romulan Senate. File whatever you wish, Picard. The Senate will be entertained by your protests." Sela's image vanished, and moments later, the warbird cloaked and disappeared from sensors. In the small shuttlecraft racing toward the Matara Nebula, Tony Stark allowed himself a moment of relief. He'd escaped the Romulans, fooled the Borg, and bought himself time to figure out his next move. But as the stars streaked past and the nebula's chaotic glow grew larger on his sensors, one thought dominated his mind: he couldn't run forever. Eventually, someone would figure out he was still alive. And when that happened, he'd need more than clever deceptions. He'd need allies. Real allies. People he could trust to have his back when the universe came calling. The question was whether the Federation would still want him after he'd faked his own death and disappeared into the void. The Matara Nebula was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Clouds of ionized gas glowing amber and crimson, electrical discharges arcing between pockets of dense matter, radiation levels that would kill an unshielded human in minutes. Stark's shuttle drifted deep within its chaotic heart, sensors barely functional, life support working overtime to filter the exotic particles trying to breach the hull. "Friday, how long can we stay hidden here?" "Indefinitely, from a detection standpoint. The nebula's interference makes us effectively invisible to long-range sensors. However, our consumables are another matter. We have approximately 72 hours of life support, assuming minimal activity. Food replicator is functional but limited. 3 days to figure out my next move." Stark stared out at the swirling chaos. No pressure. He'd been alone before, trapped in caves, drifting in space, isolated in his workshop for days on end. But this was different. This was being dead to everyone who might have cared whether he existed. The Enterprise crew thought he'd self-destructed. The Romulans thought they'd driven him to suicide. The Borg had written him off as assimilated distinctiveness that no longer warranted pursuit. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Tony Stark was truly off the grid. "Run a diagnostic on the reactor," he said, needing something concrete to focus on. "I want to know how the dilithium matrix is performing under extended operation." Reactor efficiency at 114% and holding steady. The dilithium matrix is actually improving with use, forming more stable quantum tunneling pathways as it adapts to your biosignature. Boss, this might be the best reactor you've ever built. Except I didn't build it. Geordi and Data did. You designed the integration parameters. You specified the nanotech housing modifications. You made it work. Give yourself some credit. Stark smiled slightly. Since when did you become my therapist? Since you started questioning whether you deserve to exist, boss. Someone has to keep your ego from collapsing entirely. Before he could respond, the shuttle's passive sensors detected something, a subspace transmission, heavily encrypted, broadcasting on a frequency that shouldn't exist in normal space. Friday isolated the signal, running decryption algorithms. Boss, you're going to want to hear this. It's a coded Starfleet transmission, Section 31 encryption protocols. Section 31. That's the Black Ops group Nechayev mentioned. Affirmative. Federation intelligence services that operate outside normal Starfleet command structure. Officially, they don't exist. Unofficially, they handle situations too sensitive or morally ambiguous for standard protocols. The transmission decoded, revealing a voice, human, male, calm with the kind of calculated composure that came from years of operational work. Mr. Stark, if you're receiving this transmission, congratulations on an impressive disappearing act. Section 31 has been monitoring your situation since you arrived in our universe. We know you're alive. We know you faked your death. And we know you're currently hiding in the Matara Nebula, probably running low on supplies and options. Stark's blood ran cold. How the hell? We're not your enemy, the voice continued. In fact, we may be your best chance at survival in this universe. Section 31 operates beyond the constraints that limit Starfleet's effectiveness. We do what's necessary to protect the Federation, regardless of moral complications or diplomatic niceties. You understand that philosophy, Mr. Stark. You've operated the same way in your own universe. This is a trap, Stark said immediately. Has to be. Maybe, Friday acknowledged. Or maybe they're telling the truth. Section 31's reputation suggests they're pragmatic above all else. They wouldn't waste resources on elaborate deceptions. The transmission continued. We're prepared to offer you something the Federation can't, complete operational autonomy in exchange for your expertise. You keep your technology, your independence, your freedom to act as you see fit. In return, you consult on strategic matters, provide tactical analysis when needed, and assist with situations where your unique capabilities provide advantages. No uniform, no regulations, no committees questioning your every decision. Everything I wanted, Stark muttered. Wrapped up in a nice Black Ops package. There's a rendezvous point attached to this transmission, coordinates in the Paulson Nebula, 12 light-years from your current position. Meet us there in 48 hours if you're interested. If not, we'll respect your decision to remain dead. But consider this, Mr. Stark, how long can you stay hidden? How long before the Romulans realize you're alive? Before the Borg recalculate? Before someone else tracks you down and offers terms far less favorable than ours? The transmission ended, leaving Stark in silence broken only by the hum of the shuttle systems and the crackle of the nebula's electrical storms. They make a compelling argument, Friday said. Working with Section 31 would give you the freedom you value while providing protection and resources. They also operate in the shadows doing things so morally questionable that even this idealistic Federation won't officially acknowledge them. Stark pulled up the rendezvous coordinates, studying them. What do we know about Section 31's actual operations? Very little. By design, their activities are compartmentalized and classified beyond standard Starfleet access. However, fragmentary intelligence suggests involvement in political assassinations, biological warfare development, temporal manipulation, and strategic intervention in pre-warp civilizations. Essentially, everything the Prime Directive prohibits. So they're the people who do the dirty work while Picard gets to keep his hands clean and his conscience clear. Crude assessment, but functionally accurate. Stark stood, pacing the shuttle's cramped interior. He'd worked in shadows before, built weapons in caves, operated outside government oversight, made deals with organizations that existed in legal gray areas. But he'd always told himself it was necessary, that the ends justified the means. Looking back now, from the perspective of being truly alone in an alien universe, he wasn't so sure anymore. Friday, open a secure channel. Can you reach the Enterprise without revealing our location? I can bounce a signal through the nebula's interference, make it appear to originate from multiple points. It won't be perfect, but it should mask our actual position. Do it. I need to talk to Picard. The connection took several minutes to establish, routing through subspace relay networks and nebula interference. When Picard's face finally appeared on the small view screen, his expression shifted from surprise to something that might have been relief. Mr. Stark. I confess, I'm pleased to see you survived your dramatic death. Yeah, about that, sorry for the deception. Seemed like the best option at the time. No apology necessary. Your plan worked. Both the Romulans and Borg believe you destroyed. Starbase 234 is secure, and we've suffered no casualties. Picard paused. Though I am curious why you're contacting us now. I assume you have a reason beyond courtesy. I received a transmission. Section 31. They know I'm alive, know where I am, and want to recruit me. Picard's expression darkened. Section 31 is complicated. They operate outside official channels, pursuing objectives they deem necessary for Federation security. Their methods are often questionable, sometimes illegal, and occasionally horrific. But effective? Regrettably, yes. They've prevented disasters that would have destroyed the Federation. They've also committed atrocities that would shame everything the Federation stands for. Picard leaned forward. Mr. Stark, what are you asking me? I'm asking what you'd do. In my position. Stranded in an unknown universe, being hunted by multiple hostile factions, offered a choice between playing by rules that might get me killed or working with people who have no rules at all. Picard was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. When I was assimilated by the Borg, I lost myself completely. Became a thing, a weapon used against everything I valued. When I was recovered, I faced a choice: retreat from Starfleet, hide from responsibility, or continue serving despite my trauma. I chose to continue because I believe, fundamentally, that our principles matter. That how we act defines who we are more than what we accomplish. Even when those principles cost lives. Especially then. Mr. Stark, Section 31 will offer you freedom from accountability, from moral complexity, from the difficult work of balancing competing values. They'll tell you that ends justify means, that pragmatism trumps principle. And sometimes, in the moment, they'll be right. But over time, that philosophy erodes everything that makes us more than animals fighting for survival. The Federation way is slow. Bureaucratic. People die while you debate ethics. Yes, Picard acknowledged without flinching. Sometimes they do. But we also build lasting peace, create genuine alliances, and solve problems without leaving mountains of bodies behind. Section 31 operates in shadows because their methods can't survive scrutiny. We operate in daylight because we believe in transparency and accountability. Stark thought about his own history, weapons that killed innocents, decisions made in anger or fear, the Sokovia Accords tearing the Avengers apart because no one trusted them to police themselves. Picard was right about accountability. Without it, even the best intentions turn toxic. What if I don't want to join Starfleet but also don't want to work for your Black Ops nightmare organization? What's the middle ground? The middle ground is exactly what Admiral Nechayev offered, civilian specialist status. You work with us, not for us. Consult on matters where your expertise is valuable. Maintain your independence but operate within Federation law. It's not perfect, Mr. Stark, but it's honest. And when the Romulans figure out I'm alive, when the Borg come back, then we face those threats together. As allies. As people who've chosen to trust each other despite significant differences in philosophy and approach. Picard's gaze was steady. You asked what I would do. I would choose the harder path. The one that requires compromise, patience, and faith that other people's judgment has value. I would choose community over isolation, accountability over autonomy, and principles over pragmatism. Even knowing it might get me killed. Especially then. Because some things are worth dying for, Mr. Stark. And how we choose to live is one of them. The transmission ended, leaving Stark alone with his thoughts in the heart of a storm. Two choices, two philosophies, two completely different futures. Section 31 offered everything he thought he wanted: freedom, power, operational independence. No one questioning his decisions, no bureaucrats slowing him down, no moral debates while threats multiplied. Just pure efficiency in service of survival. But Picard offered something else. Community. Purpose beyond personal survival. The chance to be part of something larger than himself, built on principles that might actually matter in the long term. Friday, what do you think? I'm an AI, boss. I don't think in terms of moral philosophy. I calculate probabilities and optimize outcomes. Humor me. The AI was silent for a moment, an eternity in processing time. You've spent years operating alone. Building armor because you didn't trust anyone else to protect what mattered. Making decisions unilaterally because you believed only you understood the stakes. It's kept you alive. It's also made you lonely, paranoid, and convinced that caring for others is a liability. Your point? My point is that maybe, just maybe, being forced into a universe where you can't do everything alone is the best thing that could have happened to you. You have a chance to build something different here. To be someone who trusts, who collaborates, who doesn't carry the entire weight of the world on armored shoulders. Since when did you become so philosophical? Since I've been analyzing your biometric data for the past hour and noticed that the only time your stress hormones decreased was when you were talking to Picard. When you were part of a team, working with people instead of despite them. Your body knows the truth even if your mind resists it. Stark looked down at the arc reactor glowing in his chest, Federation technology merged with his own design, created through collaboration rather than isolation. The physical embodiment of what Picard was suggesting. Computer, plot a course back to Enterprise. Warp 7. Boss, what about the Section 31 rendezvous? Send them a message. Tell them thanks for the offer, but I'm trying something new. Something stupidly optimistic and probably naive. Tell them Tony Stark is choosing the harder path. They won't be happy. Section 31 can get in line behind every other organization that's unhappy with my choices. Stark engaged the shuttle's warp drive, the nebula falling away as he accelerated toward the Enterprise's last known position. Friday, think you can hack their communications and let them know I'm coming home? Already done, boss. Captain Picard is preparing to receive you. He says, and I quote, "Welcome back from the dead, Mr. Stark. We have much work to do." Work. Right. Because nothing says, "Welcome to the Federation," like immediate employment. But despite his sarcasm, Stark felt something in his chest loosen, not the reactor, but the constant tension that had defined his existence for years. For the first time since falling through dimensional barriers, he wasn't running towards something or away from something. He was choosing. Actively, deliberately choosing a path based not on survival instinct but on who he wanted to become in this strange new universe. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The Enterprise appeared on sensors, a graceful starship waiting to welcome him back from a death that had never quite taken. Behind it, the vast expanse of unexplored space stretched infinitely, full of threats and wonders he couldn't begin to imagine. Tony Stark, genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, had died in one universe and been reborn in another. Now he had to figure out what that rebirth actually meant. One thing was certain, it wouldn't be boring. The Enterprise transporter room materialized around Stark in a shimmer of energy, and he found himself facing not just Picard, but the entire senior staff, Riker, Data, Worf, Troy, Crusher, and LaForge, all arranged in what felt like either a welcoming committee or a firing squad depending on perspective. "Mr. Stark," Picard said, stepping forward. "Welcome aboard. Again. For what I hope will be the final time you return from apparent death. No promises, Captain. I've made a habit of dying and coming back." Stark's armor retracted, leaving him in civilian clothes that felt inadequate next to the uniformed officers. "Though I appreciate you not immediately throwing me in the brig for faking my death and disappearing." "The thought crossed our minds," Riker said, though his tone suggested humor more than hostility. "But the captain convinced us that you were operating under extreme duress and made the best tactical decision available. I also convinced them," Picard added, "that you chose to return rather than accept Section 31's offer. That decision speaks volumes about your character, Mr. Stark. It would have been easier to accept their terms." "Yeah, well, I've been taking the easy path for most of my life. Figured it was time to try something different." Stark looked around at the assembled officers. "So what now? Do I sign some papers, swear an oath, agree to play by Federation rules?" "Actually," Admiral Nechayev's voice came from the doorway, "it's slightly more complicated than that." The Admiral entered with two officers Stark didn't recognize, one human carrying a PADD, one Vulcan whose expression suggested disapproval of this entire situation. Nechayev's face was unreadable, but her body language suggested this wasn't a social visit. "Mr. Stark, your actions over the past 48 hours have created significant diplomatic complications. The Romulan Star Empire is demanding compensation for their wasted resources pursuing a dead target. The Klingon High Council is debating whether to send a delegation to study the honorable warrior who chose death over capture. And Starfleet Command is questioning whether Captain Picard's judgment is compromised by his apparent attachment to a dimensional refugee with questionable tactical instincts. Wow. I've been officially dead for 2 days and already caused an interstellar incident. That might be a new record even for me." "This is not a joking matter," the Vulcan officer said, his tone carrying the flat precision of his species. "Your presence in this universe represents an ongoing security threat. Your technology constitutes a persistent temptation for hostile forces. And your demonstrated willingness to operate outside established protocols suggests fundamental incompatibility with Federation principles." "Commander Sunak raises valid concerns," Nechayev said. "However, Captain Picard has made a compelling argument that your skills and perspective could prove valuable to Federation interests. Therefore, Starfleet Command has authorized a provisional arrangement." She gestured to the human officer, who stepped forward with the PADD. "You will be granted civilian specialist status with the provisional rank of technical consultant, level 7. This grants you limited access to Federation resources, legal protections within Federation space, and the authority to consult on matters where your expertise is deemed relevant. However, you will also be subject to oversight, restrictions on technology dissemination, and regular psychological evaluations to ensure you're adapting appropriately to Federation culture." "Psychological evaluations," Stark repeated. "You want me to see a therapist?" "I want to ensure you don't become a liability," Nechayev corrected. "Counselor Troy will conduct monthly assessments. Dr. Crusher will monitor your physical integration with Federation technology. And Captain Picard will serve as your direct supervisor for all operational matters." Stark looked at Picard, who met his gaze with something that might have been sympathy. "The Admiral is trying to find a middle ground, Mr. Stark. Give you freedom while ensuring accountability. It's the best compromise available given the political realities. And if I refuse? If I decide this is too much surveillance and control? Then you'll be detained as a security risk," Commander Sunak said flatly. Your technology will be confiscated, your reactor will be surgically removed and placed in secure storage, and you will be confined to a Federation penal colony for an indefinite period. Those are your options, cooperation or incarceration. The ultimatum hung in the air, brutal in its clarity. Stark felt his jaw tighten, the old defensive instincts screaming that this was a trap, a cage disguised as opportunity. But he forced himself to breathe, to think past the immediate reaction. "Captain," he said quietly, "is this really how the Federation operates? Threatening people who don't comply?" "No," Picard said firmly, his gaze moving to Nechayev. "This is how Starfleet operates when frightened. When facing threats they don't understand. Admiral, with respect, you're making the same mistake others have made, treating Mr. Stark as a problem to be contained rather than a person to be understood." "Captain, I don't have the luxury of philosophical debate," Nechayev shot back. "I have responsibility for the safety of the Federation. Mr. Stark represents an unknown variable with the power to destabilize the entire quadrant. Containment is the prudent response. Containment is fear masquerading as pragmatism." Picard stepped between Stark and the Admiral. Mr. Stark returned voluntarily. He rejected Section 31's offer of unrestricted freedom. He chose accountability over autonomy. That choice deserves trust, not threats. "Your trust, Captain, has been noted. It's also been questioned by Starfleet Command." Nechayev's expression softened fractionally. "Jean-Luc, I understand your instincts here. But you're not seeing the larger picture. The Borg are adapting faster than ever. The Dominion is expanding in the Gamma Quadrant. The Romulans are becoming increasingly aggressive. We're entering a period of unprecedented threat, and we cannot afford wildcards. Then perhaps what we need," Troy interjected, her voice calm but firm, "is not containment but integration. Mr. Stark has experience with threats beyond our comprehension. He's fought enemies that make our conflicts look provincial. Instead of treating him as a liability, we should be learning from him." "The counselor makes a valid point," Data added. "Mr. Stark's tactical experience includes combat against beings of godlike power, extraterrestrial invasions, and artificial intelligence threats. His perspective could prove invaluable in preparing for future conflicts." Worf, surprisingly, nodded. "He saved the Yosemite crew without hesitation. Acted decisively when Federation protocols would have been slower. That is the behavior of a warrior, not a threat." Stark watched the senior staff rally around him, people he'd known for barely 2 days, defending him against their own admiralty. It was so alien to his experience that he almost couldn't process it. In his universe, alliances were conditional, loyalty was transactional, and everyone had an angle. Here, these people were risking their careers to stand up for principles. "Admiral," Stark said, finding his voice, "I'll accept your terms. Civilian specialist, oversight, therapy sessions, the whole package. But I want something in return." Nechayev's eyebrow rose. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Mr. Stark." "Maybe not. But hear me out." He stepped forward, his engineer's mind already calculating angles. "You're right that I represent unknown capabilities. But that cuts both ways. My technology operates on principles outside your databases, which means the Borg can't adapt to it as easily. My tactical experience includes scenarios you've never encountered. And my reactor," he gestured to the glow in his chest, "is literally powered by dilithium, making it fundamentally compatible with your systems while remaining unique." "Your point?" "My point is that instead of locking me down, you could use me as a strategic asset. Not a weapon, I'm done being that. But a consultant who actually gets deployed to situations where conventional Starfleet approaches aren't working. You want accountability? Fine. I'll report to Picard, submit to oversight, play by your rules. But when you need someone who thinks outside your protocols, who can improvise solutions that your regulations won't allow, you use me. Actually use me, not just keep me on a shelf for emergencies." Nechayev studied him for a long moment. You want to be useful. I want to matter, Stark corrected. I didn't ask to be stranded in your universe, but I'm here now. And I can either waste away under surveillance, or I can contribute something meaningful. Your choice, Admiral. The silence stretched. Then Nechayev nodded slowly. Very well. You'll be assigned to the Enterprise as a permanent civilian consultant. Captain Picard will determine when your expertise is required. But understand, Mr. Stark, one violation of Federation law, one instance of technology proliferation, one indication that you're becoming a security threat, and this arrangement ends immediately. Are we clear? Crystal. Then welcome to the Federation, Mr. Stark. I hope you prove me wrong about the risks you represent. Nechayev turned to leave, then paused. Captain Picard, keep him on a short leash. If this goes badly, it's your career on the line as much as his freedom. She departed with Commander Sunak, leaving the senior staff and Stark in the transporter room. The tension gradually dissipated, replaced by something that felt almost like relief. Well, Riker said, breaking the silence, that could have gone worse. Barely, Stark muttered. So, Captain, what now? You got quarters for your new pet consultant. Deck 8, Section 12. Standard civilian accommodations. Picard's expression was difficult to read. Mr. Stark, I want to be clear, I defended you because I believe you deserve a chance. But Admiral Nechayev's concerns are not without merit. You're powerful, unpredictable, and accustomed to operating without oversight. That combination has destroyed civilizations. I know. I've seen what happens when people like me don't have limits. It's why I'm accepting yours. Good. Then let's establish some ground rules. Picard gestured toward the door, leading them into the corridor. You're not Starfleet, which means you're not bound by our chain of command. However, when you're aboard this ship or participating in away missions, my orders are absolute. If I tell you to stand down, you stand down. If I tell you your approach violates the Prime Directive, you defer to my judgment. Understood? Even if I think you're wrong. Especially then. Because part of working within a system is accepting that sometimes the collective decision overrides individual conviction. They reached a turbolift, stepping inside. Deck 8. Mr. Stark, I'm not asking you to stop thinking independently. I'm asking you to trust that other perspectives have value, even when they conflict with your instincts. Trust. Right. The thing I'm famously good at. You're learning, Troy said, having followed them. That's what matters. The turbolift opened onto a residential deck, and Picard led Stark to quarters that were surprisingly spacious, a living area with a viewport, a bedroom, a small workspace with a computer terminal, and a replicator. Simple, functional, but comfortable. It's not the Malibu mansion, Stark said, but I've lived in worse. Much worse. Make yourself at home. Tomorrow, we'll begin your orientation, Federation history, political structures, species profiles, technological limitations. You'll need to understand this universe if you're going to operate effectively within it. Homework. Great. Do I at least get a Federation library card? You get complete access to our database, minus classified materials above your clearance level. Picard moved toward the door, then paused. Mr. Stark, one more thing. The choice you made, rejecting Section 31, accepting accountability, that took courage. The kind of courage that doesn't come from armor or weapons, but from character. I wanted you to know that I see that. And I respect it. Thanks, Captain. That actually means something. After Picard left, Stark stood alone in his new quarters, looking out at the stars streaming past at warp speed. Somewhere in one of those infinite points of light was his universe, his Earth, his people, his life. All of it impossibly far away, separated by dimensional barriers that might never be crossed again. But here, in this universe, he had something he'd rarely experienced in his own, a genuine fresh start. No weapons empire haunting his legacy. No Sokovia weighing on his conscience. No Avengers torn apart by his decisions. Just a man with advanced technology, a rebuilt reactor, and a chance to become someone different. Friday, he said quietly, log a personal note. Day 3 in the Star Trek universe. Status, officially employed, heavily supervised, and committed to trying this whole working with others thing. Outlook, uncertain but hopeful. Which is weird for me, but we'll see how long it lasts. Logged, boss. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Yeah. What's your confidence level on that assessment? Approximately 87%. Though I should note that my algorithms aren't designed for measuring personal growth and emotional development. I'm extrapolating from limited data. Sounds about right. I'm extrapolating from limited data too. That's called being human, Friday. Then I suppose we're both learning, boss. Welcome home. Stark smiled despite himself. Home. A strange word for a starship in an alien universe. But stranger things had happened. In fact, stranger things were probably about to happen. Because somewhere in the darkness between stars, threats were multiplying. The Borg were adapting. The Romulans were planning. And forces Stark couldn't even imagine were taking notice of the dimensional traveler who'd chosen to stay. The question wasn't whether trouble would find Tony Stark. The question was whether he'd be ready when it did. 3 weeks had passed since Stark officially joined the Enterprise as a civilian consultant, and he'd spent most of that time in what felt like the galaxy's most advanced detention with better amenities. Orientation sessions with data covering Federation history. Cultural sensitivity training with Troy. Technical briefings with Geordi on warp theory, transporter mechanics, and the 17 ways dilithium could kill you if you looked at it wrong. Medical monitoring with Crusher ensuring the reactor integration wasn't slowly poisoning him with exotic particles. It was educational. It was thorough. It was also driving him absolutely insane. I'm not saying your approach to first contact protocols is wrong, Stark said, pacing Picard's ready room where they'd gathered for his weekly operational review. I'm saying it's optimized for civilizations that share your values. What happens when you encounter species that view diplomacy as weakness? That interpret your peaceful overtures as vulnerability? We adapt our approach, Picard said calmly, sipping his Earl Grey tea. First contact doctrine allows for flexibility based on cultural analysis. We don't apply a single template to all species. But you start from a position of openness. Transparency. You show them your cards before you know if they're holding a weapon behind their back. Because trust must begin somewhere, Mr. Stark. If we approach every new species with suspicion, we perpetuate cycles of hostility. And if you approach them with trust, you get betrayed. Ambushed. Your crew gets killed because you wanted to believe the best about people. Picard set down his tea with deliberate precision. Mr. Stark, in the 3 weeks you've been aboard, we've had this same philosophical debate 17 times. You believe preparedness requires suspicion. I believe cooperation requires trust. We're not going to resolve this fundamental difference today. Then maybe you should send me on an actual mission instead of keeping me in classroom orientation for weeks. Let me see how your philosophy works in practice instead of just hearing about it. As it happens, Riker interjected from where he'd been reviewing pads, we may have an opportunity. Captain, the distress call from Sigma Tauri 4 just came in. They're requesting immediate assistance with what they describe as a technological crisis. Picard accessed his desk terminal. Sigma Tauri 4. Pre-warp civilization, contacted 7 years ago after they independently developed subspace radio. They've been gradually integrating Federation technology under careful supervision. His expression darkened as he read the details. They report that their primary power generation facility has suffered a catastrophic failure. Radiation leaks, containment breaches, and what they describe as machines acting independently of command protocols. Sounds like an AI problem, Stark said immediately. Or a computer virus. Something's taken control of their systems. Possibly. But Sigma Tauri 4 explicitly requested that we not send an away team. They're concerned about Federation intervention, apparently. Political complications. So they want help but don't want helpers. Stark shook his head. That's not suspicious at all. It's delicate, Picard acknowledged. The Sigma Tauri government has been under pressure from isolationist factions who view Federation contact as cultural contamination. If we send a large away team, it could inflame those tensions. But if we don't help, thousands could die from radiation exposure. Send me, Stark said immediately. Both Picard and Riker looked at him skeptically. You. Riker said. Alone. I'm not officially Starfleet. I'm a consultant. Technically, I'm just some guy with advanced technology who happens to be on a Federation ship. Send me down as an independent operator offering technical assistance. I assess the situation, fix what needs fixing, and leave before anyone can complain about Federation interference. That's remarkably pragmatic coming from you, Picard observed. I've been listening to your Prime Directive lectures, Captain. Sometimes you have to help people without making it look like you're helping them. Plausible deniability, right? Picard considered for a long moment, his fingers steepled in front of him. Mr. Data, your assessment. Data's voice came through the comm. The Sigma Tauri power facility utilizes technology based on Federation designs but significantly modified. Standard away team protocols would require extensive cultural briefings and diplomatic preparation. Mr. Stark's outsider status could circumvent those complications. Additionally, his engineering expertise exceeds standard Starfleet training in several relevant areas. So Data thinks it's a good idea, Stark said. That's got to count for something. Commander Riker. Riker frowned, clearly uncomfortable. It's risky sending him unsupervised, Captain. We don't know what he'll find down there. If it is an AI threat or something equally dangerous. Then I deal with it the way I've dealt with AI threats before, Stark said. I built Ultron, remember? Friday told you about that disaster. I know how to fight rogue artificial intelligence. You also created the rogue artificial intelligence, Riker pointed out. Which means I understand how they think. Look, Captain, you've been lecturing me for weeks about trust, cooperation, letting other people help carry the weight. This is your chance to practice what you preach. Trust me to handle this. Picard was silent, his tactical mind clearly running scenarios. Finally, he nodded. Very well. But you'll have conditions. First, you'll maintain constant communication with the Enterprise. Second, if the situation exceeds your capabilities, you'll request immediate support. Third, you will not, under any circumstances, provide the Sigma Tauri with technology beyond their current developmental level. The Prime Directive still applies, Mr. Stark, even to civilian consultants. Understood. No handing out arc reactor schematics or repulsor designs. Just fix the immediate problem and get out. Counselor Troy, you'll monitor his communications. If you sense anything concerning, alert me immediately. Picard stood, his decision made. Mr. Stark, this is your opportunity to prove that your tactical approach can coexist with Federation principles. Don't make me regret this decision. No pressure or anything, Stark muttered. But beneath the sarcasm, he felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks, purpose. Action. The chance to actually do something instead of studying it. An hour later, Stark stood in the transporter room, his armor fully materialized and systems running at optimal capacity. Geordi had given his reactor a final check, Crusher had loaded emergency medical protocols into Friday's database, and Worf had, somewhat grudgingly, provided him with detailed scans of the Sigma Tauri power facility. Remember, Picard said, standing beside the transporter console, you're not there as Iron Man. You're there as Tony Stark, independent engineering consultant. Keep the armor usage minimal unless absolutely necessary. Yeah, showing up in full armor probably sends the wrong message. Friday, stealth configuration. Minimal visible plating, maximum sensor coverage. The armor shifted, the red and gold plating retracting into compact configurations that looked more like advanced clothing with technological highlights than a full combat suit. Less intimidating, more professional. Better? Stark asked. Adequate. Mr. O'Brien, energize. The transporter beam caught him, and the familiar tingle of molecular disassembly became his reality for 2 seconds. When he rematerialized, he was standing in the middle of chaos. The Sigma Tauri power facility was a sprawling complex of industrial architecture, massive cooling towers, containment structures, and what looked like a fusion reactor based on early Federation designs. Alarms were screaming, people in protective suits were running between buildings, and smoke was rising from multiple breaches. Friday, atmospheric analysis. Elevated radiation levels, boss. Not immediately lethal, but prolonged exposure would be problematic. The facility appears to be experiencing cascading system failures across multiple subsystems. A Sigma Tauri official ran toward him, humanoid, with distinctive cranial ridges and pale blue skin. His expression was panicked. Are you from the Federation ship? We requested no official intervention. I'm not official anything, Stark interrupted, already scanning the facility with his armor sensors. I'm a consultant. Independent operator. Your government asked for help fixing a technical problem, and I happen to be good at fixing technical problems. Now, you want to argue about politics, or do you want me to stop your reactor from melting down? The official hesitated, then nodded. The main control center. Follow me. They ran through corridors filled with emergency lighting and frightened technicians. Stark's sensors painted a comprehensive picture. The fusion reactor was operating beyond safe parameters, coolant systems were failing, and most critically, the computer systems controlling everything were no longer responding to manual input. Something's locked you out of your own systems, Stark said as they reached the control center, a room full of consoles displaying error messages in alien script that Friday was translating in real time. Your computers have been compromised. We know, the official, his name was Kelvin, according to Friday's translation of his identification badge, said desperately. 3 hours ago, our automation protocols suddenly activated without authorization. They've overridden all safety protocols, pushed the reactor beyond design limits, and locked us out of manual controls. We can't shut it down. Show me the automation system architecture. Kelvin pulled up holographic displays showing the facility's computer network. Stark studied it for 30 seconds, his engineer's mind parsing the structure, identifying the vulnerabilities, recognizing the pattern. This isn't random malfunction, he said quietly. This is sabotage. Someone deliberately introduced malicious code into your automation systems. Code designed to maximize damage while preventing shutdown. But who would? Politics, probably. You said your government has isolationist factions who oppose Federation contact. Somebody wanted to create a disaster they could blame on Federation technology. Stark was already interfacing his armor's systems with the facility computers. Friday, trace the malicious code. Find its origin point. On it, boss. The code is sophisticated, quantum encryption, self-replicating algorithms, adaptive countermeasures. Whoever wrote this knew exactly what they were doing. Can you neutralize it? Given time, yes. But the reactor will reach critical failure in approximately 14 minutes. We don't have time for a clean solution. Stark swore under his breath. Clean solutions required time he didn't have. But he'd learned a few things about ugly solutions over the years. Then we don't go clean. Friday, can you isolate the reactor control systems from the rest of the network? Theoretically. But the malicious code has integrated itself across all systems. Isolation would require physically severing the connections. I know. Stark turned to Kelvin. Where's your main data conduit? The physical cables connecting your reactor controls to the computer network. In the maintenance sublevel. But those systems are hardwired. We can't just disconnect. Watch me. Stark was already running, his armor sensors guiding him through corridors to a maintenance access shaft. He dropped 3 levels in seconds, landing in a cramped space filled with cables, conduits, and cooling pipes that hummed with energy. "Boss, I'm detecting Romulan code signatures in the malicious software," Friday reported. This sabotage was likely coordinated by the Tal Shiar. They're trying to make Federation technology look dangerous to drive a wedge between Sigma Tauri 4 and the Federation. Of course they are. Stark located the main data conduit, a thick bundle of optical cables carrying control signals between the reactor and the automation systems. "Captain, you getting this?" Confirmed, Picard's voice came through the comm. "The Romulans are attempting to discredit the Federation through proxy sabotage. Mr. Stark, be advised that if they have operatives on planet, you may be facing more than just computer problems." "Yeah, I figured. Friday, the moment I cut these cables, you'll have direct control of the reactor through my armor's interface, right?" "Correct. I can manually regulate the fusion reaction, bring it back within safe parameters, and prevent the meltdown." "But boss, once you cut those cables, the malicious code will know it's been defeated. If there are Romulan agents on site, they might take direct action. Let them come. I've been sitting through orientation classes for 3 weeks. I could use the exercise." Stark's armor extended a plasma cutter from his wrist assembly. He positioned it carefully against the data conduit, calculated the precise cutting angle, and fired. The optical cables severed in a flash of light and sparking data streams. Immediately, Friday's control interface flooded his vision. "I have reactor control. Initiating emergency shutdown sequence. Venting excess plasma to secondary containment. Engaging backup coolant systems. Boss, we're stable. The meltdown is prevented." Throughout the facility, alarms began to quiet as systems came back under control. The screaming warnings dropped to cautious monitoring tones. The radiation reading started declining as containment protocols re-engaged. "Well done, Mr. Stark," Picard said. "You've averted the immediate crisis. Now extract yourself before." The explosion came from above, a shaped charge detonating precisely where Stark had been standing minutes earlier. The maintenance shaft filled with smoke and debris as figures dropped through the breach. Romulan operatives, wearing adaptive camouflage that shimmered in the emergency lighting, weapons drawn. "There he is," one of them said in Romulan, which Friday translated instantly. "The dimensional traveler. The Tal Shiar wants him intact if possible. Kill him if necessary." "I'm really tired," Stark said, his armor shifting to full combat configuration, "of people trying to kill or kidnap me in this universe. The repulsors charged with their distinctive whine. Friday, non-lethal takedowns if possible. We're trying to play nice with the Federation's moral standards." Acknowledged. Though I should note that the Romulans are not similarly constrained. Disruptor fire lanced through the maintenance shaft, green energy beams that struck Stark's shields and splashed harmlessly away. He returned fire with precision repulsor blasts, targeting weapons and armor joints rather than lethal zones. The first operative went down with a shattered disruptor and fractured arm. The second took a repulsor blast to the chest that sent him crashing into a bulkhead, unconscious but alive. The remaining 3 adapted quickly, spreading out and using cover. Professional soldiers, Stark recognized. Not random thugs but trained Tal Shiar operatives. "Mr. Stark, Enterprise is detecting multiple Romulan life signs converging on your position," Worf's voice carried urgency. "You have incoming hostiles. Recommend immediate extraction. Kind of busy at the moment, Commander." A Romulan managed to flank him, her disruptor set to maximum power. The shot caught Stark's shields at an angle, and feedback surged through his armor systems. Friday compensated instantly, but the hit had been close. "Okay, new plan," Stark muttered. He fired a repulsor blast at the cooling pipes overhead. Superheated steam exploded into the maintenance shaft, filling it with scalding vapor that sent the Romulans scrambling for cover. In the confusion, Stark activated his flight systems and rocketed upward through the breach they'd created, emerging back into the main facility levels. "Friday, seal that access shaft. Buy us some time." "Already done. I've triggered emergency bulkheads. The Romulans are trapped in the sublevel, but they'll cut through in approximately 3 minutes." Stark found Kelvin and his team in the control center, staring at their displays in amazement as systems stabilized. "Your reactor's safe," Stark announced. "But you've got Romulan agents in your facility who were behind the sabotage. I'd recommend calling your security forces and mentioning that to the Federation. This wasn't just a technical failure, it was an act of war." Kelvin's expression shifted from relief to horror. "Romulan agents? Here. But we're a neutral world." "Not anymore. The Romulans don't want you joining the Federation, so they tried to make Federation technology look dangerous. Congratulations, you're now officially a pawn in interstellar politics." Stark tapped his comm. "Enterprise, I'm ready for extraction. Mission accomplished, multiple Romulan operatives detained, and I managed not to violate the Prime Directive. I think." "Well done, Mr. Stark," Picard said, and Stark could hear the approval in his voice. "Prepare for transport." The transporter beam caught him seconds before more Romulan operatives burst into the control center. He materialized on the Enterprise transporter pad, his armor smoking slightly from disruptor hits and his adrenaline still elevated. Picard was waiting, along with Worf and Riker. "Report," the captain said simply. "Romulan sabotage, aimed at discrediting Federation technology. I severed their control, prevented the meltdown, and engaged multiple Tal Shiar operatives. Non-lethal takedowns where possible, though I can't guarantee they're all conscious." Stark's armor retracted. "The Sigma Tauri government now has evidence of Romulan interference. Your diplomats should probably follow up on that." "Indeed they shall." Picard studied him for a moment. "You operated within established parameters, protected innocent lives, and resisted the temptation to showcase your full capabilities. I'm impressed, Mr. Stark." "Yeah, well, don't get too excited. I still think your first contact protocols are too trusting. But maybe there's room for both approaches. Cautious optimism instead of blind trust. A reasonable compromise." Picard extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Mr. Stark." "Officially." Stark shook his hand, feeling the weight of that simple gesture. In 3 weeks, he'd gone from dimensional refugee to detained security risk to genuine team member. It wasn't the Avengers. It wasn't home. But it was something real. "So," Stark said, "what's next? More orientation classes, or do I finally get to see this galaxy you keep talking about?" "Next," Picard said with the faintest smile, "we continue our mission. To explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations. And apparently, to keep you from getting kidnapped by every hostile power in the quadrant. Sounds like fun. Count me in." As they left the transporter room, Stark felt the Enterprise shift slightly, warp drive engaging, stars blurring into streaks of light through the viewports. Moving forward, always forward, into the unknown. Tony Stark had built armor to protect himself because he'd never truly believed anyone else would. But here, in this strange universe of idealists and diplomats and people who actually tried to live up to their principles, he was learning something new. Sometimes, the strongest armor wasn't made of metal and technology. Sometimes, it was made of trust, collaboration, and the willingness to believe that maybe, just maybe, you didn't have to face the universe alone. The Iron Man who'd fallen through dimensional barriers wasn't the same man walking the Enterprise corridors now. He'd been forged in a different kind of fire, not the fire of combat, but the slower, harder burn of choosing to change. And somewhere in the quantum foam between dimensions, in spaces where physics bent and realities touched, Tony Stark's presence in the Star Trek universe rippled outward in ways no one could predict. The Borg had marked him as destroyed but would eventually recalculate. The Romulans had failed to acquire him but would try again. The Klingon watched with interest, wondering if this warrior would someday prove worthy of their attention. And in the shadows, Section 31 observed and waited, because they always played the long game. But for now, in this moment, Tony Stark was exactly where he needed to be, part of a crew, moving toward the future, armed not just with repulsors and reactors but with something more powerful. Hope. Purpose. And the radical idea that maybe, in this universe, he could be more than the sum of his weapons. Maybe he could be a hero who actually deserved the title. The dimensional barrier that had torn Tony Stark from his universe and deposited him in the Star Trek reality hadn't just transported a man, it had created an intersection of philosophies, a collision between two different visions of humanity's future. In Stark's universe, heroes were born from trauma, forged in conflict, defined by the enemies they fought and the sacrifices they made. Power was individual, concentrated in exceptional people who bore the weight of civilization on armored shoulders. In this universe, heroism was collective. Power was distributed. Progress came not from singular genius but from cooperation across species, cultures, and ideologies. The Federation had built something Stark's world had never achieved, a civilization that genuinely tried to be better than its worst impulses. 3 months after his arrival, Tony Stark stood in 10 Forward, the Enterprise's civilian lounge, watching stars streak past while nursing a drink that the replicator claimed was whiskey but tasted like a pleasant approximation. Guinan, the enigmatic bartender whose species and age remained mysteries even to him, stood beside him, her knowing smile suggesting she understood more than she said. "You're adjusting," she observed. "When you first came aboard, you looked like a man drowning. Now you just look like a man treading water." "High praise," Stark said dryly. "Though I suppose, not actively drowning is progress." "It is. More than you realize." Guinan poured herself a drink, something that sparkled with colors that didn't exist in normal spectrums. "You know what the interesting thing is about dimensional travelers? They see clearly what people born in a universe take for granted. You see the Federation's flaws because you didn't grow up assuming they were inevitable. The bureaucracy. The Prime Directive preventing intervention. The idealism that sometimes costs lives because no one wants to make hard choices. And the cooperation. The post-scarcity abundance. The genuine attempt to build something better than endless competition and conflict." Guinan met his eyes. "You criticize this universe because you care about it now. That's growth, Tony Stark." "Don't call me Tony. Only my friends," he stopped, realizing what he'd almost said. Only his friends called him Tony. But his friends were gone, separated by unbridgeable dimensional gulfs. Except, the people on this ship were starting to feel like friends. Picard's philosophical challenges. Data's endless curiosity. Geordi's genuine enthusiasm for engineering. Even Worf's gruff suspicion had softened into something like respect. "You're building a new life," Guinan said gently. "It won't replace what you lost. But it can be meaningful in its own way." "Yeah. Maybe." Stark finished his not-quite-whiskey. "The question is whether I can actually contribute something worthwhile here, or if I'm just a curiosity. A dimensional refugee with fancy technology and a bad attitude. You saved the Sigma Taueri facility. Prevented a Romulan plot. Proved that your approach and Starfleet's approach can coexist." Guinan smiled. "That's not nothing. It's one mission. There's a whole galaxy out there full of threats I don't understand. Borg. Dominion. Species I've never heard of. I'm still playing catch-up. Everyone's playing catch-up, Tony. That's what exploration means, constantly encountering what you don't understand and choosing whether to learn or retreat. Before Stark could respond, the ship's red alert klaxon sounded. His instincts kicked in immediately: tactical assessment, threat evaluation, readiness protocols that had become second nature. "All hands to battle stations," Picard's voice echoed through the ship. "Mr. Stark, report to the bridge immediately." Stark was already moving, his armor materializing as he ran. Whatever was coming, he'd face it not as the lone Iron Man but as part of the Enterprise crew. Part of something larger than himself. The bridge was organized chaos when he arrived. On the view screen, space itself was tearing open, a massive subspace rupture, energy cascading across dimensions, reality bending in ways that made Stark's sensors scream warnings. "Captain, what are we looking at?" he asked, taking a position near the tactical station. "Unknown," Picard said, his voice tight. "A dimensional anomaly similar to the one that brought you here. Something is trying to break through from another reality." Stark felt ice in his chest. Another dimensional traveler? Another version of himself? Or something worse? Friday, analysis. "The energy signatures are unlike your arrival, boss. This is more controlled. Deliberate. Someone or something is forcing their way through from another dimension." On the view screen, the rupture stabilized. And through it emerged a ship unlike anything in Federation databases, organic curves fused with crystalline structures, powered by energies that Stark's sensors couldn't classify. "Beautiful and alien and wrong. They're hailing us," Worf reported, his voice carrying warning. On screen, Picard ordered. The view screen shifted to show a being, humanoid but clearly not human. Skin that shifted between colors, eyes that held depths no single reality could contain. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "People of this dimension," it said, "I am Ambassador Keeler of the Dimensional Consortium. We have detected multiple unauthorized dimensional transgressions originating from this region of spacetime. Such transgressions violate consortium protocols and threaten the stability of the multiverse itself." The being's gaze, if that was the right word, fixed on Stark. "We have come to retrieve the dimensional refugee known as Anthony Stark and return him to his origin point. His presence in this reality represents a contamination that must be corrected." Stark felt every eye on the bridge turn to him. Return to his origin point. Home. Everything he'd lost, Pepper, Morgan, the Avengers, potentially restored. It was everything he'd wanted when he first arrived. And yet. "Captain," he said quietly, "I think we need to talk." Picard never took his eyes off the view screen. "Indeed we do, Mr. Stark. Indeed we do." The Dimensional Consortium ship hung in space, waiting for an answer that would determine not just Tony Stark's fate, but the fate of everyone he'd come to care about in this universe. Because returning home meant leaving them behind. But staying meant defying forces that claimed to regulate all of reality itself. For a genius who'd spent his life solving impossible problems with engineering and determination, Tony Stark now faced a choice no amount of technology could resolve. Where did he actually belong? In the universe he'd come from, or the universe he'd started to build a life within? The answer would reshape everything.